Victor DeLuca ruled the city's underworld with an iron fist, feared by enemies, respected by allies, untouchable by law. He had everything: power, wealth, and a beautiful pregnant wife waiting at home. But on one reckless night, he made a choice that would bring his empire to its knees. Not a bullet, not a betrayal from rivals. Just one photograph. One careless moment of arrogance that shattered the only thing he couldn't buy back. The woman who loved him when he was nobody. This is the story of how a king lost his kingdom with a single tap of his phone. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're hooked already, hit that like button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Duck. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, blurring the city lights into rivers of gold and red. Victor DeLuca stood in his study, a glass of bourbon in one hand, the weight of an empire resting on his shoulders like a tailored coat. At 42, he commanded respect with nothing more than his presence. 6 feet of controlled power wrapped in a $3,000 suit, dark hair graying at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished rather than old. "Tell Romano I don't negotiate with people who waste my time," he said into his phone, his voice carrying that particular edge that made grown men reconsider their life choices. He has until midnight to decide if he wants to keep his warehouse or watch it burn. He ended the call without waiting for a response. That was Victor's way. Definitive, absolute, final. Behind him, the study door opened with a soft click. He didn't turn around. He knew that hesitant footstep, that barely there presence that had become background music to his life. "Victor?" Isabella's voice was soft, almost apologetic for existing. "Dinner's ready. I made that pasta you used to like." "Not hungry." He took another sip of bourbon, eyes fixed on the rain-soaked cityscape that belonged to him more than it belonged to any mayor or police commissioner. "You haven't eaten all day. It's not good." "I said I'm not hungry, Isabella." His tone wasn't cruel, just indifferent, which was somehow worse. The silence that followed felt thick enough to drown in. Victor heard her shift her weight. She was 7 months pregnant now, and everything had become an effort. He should turn around. He should look at her. He should be something other than what he'd become. He didn't. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll leave a plate in the refrigerator in case you change your mind." The door closed with the same quiet click. Victor finally turned around, staring at the empty space where his wife had stood. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. Then his phone buzzed with another message about another problem in another part of his empire, and Isabella dissolved back into the periphery of his consciousness, where she'd been living for the past 2 years. He didn't remember exactly when it had started, this slow drift away from the woman he'd married 8 years ago. Maybe it was when he took over the DeLuca family business from his uncle. Maybe it was when he realized that showing softness in his world was like showing your throat to wolves. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe he'd just stopped trying. Isabella had been different once. She'd challenged him, argued with him, made him laugh with her sharp observations about the ridiculous theater of his social circles. But somewhere along the way, she'd shrunk. Or maybe he'd crushed her into something small and silent without even noticing. The penthouse felt emptier these days, even though they both lived in it. Isabella moved through the rooms like a ghost, cooking meals he didn't eat, decorating a nursery he hadn't looked at, preparing for a child he couldn't quite make feel real. She'd tried to talk to him about names last week, something about her grandmother, family traditions, that hopeful lilt in her voice that made him feel like he was suffocating. He'd walked out in the middle of her sentence. Victor drained his glass and poured another. Outside, the city glittered with all its ugly, beautiful secrets. Somewhere down there, in the clubs and restaurants and dark alleys that fed money into his network, people feared him. They respected him. They knew who he was. At home, his pregnant wife was eating dinner alone. Again. The clock on his desk read 11:47 p.m. when Victor finally left his study. The penthouse was dark, except for the ambient glow of the city through the windows. He moved through the living room, past the designer furniture Isabella had spent months selecting, past the wedding photos that had slowly migrated from prominent display to dusty corners, past the half-finished baby blanket draped over the arm of a chair. He paused at that blanket. Pale yellow, soft-looking. Isabella's reading glasses were folded on top of it. She'd been sitting here tonight, probably, knitting or crocheting or whatever the hell she did while waiting for him to acknowledge her existence. The guilt flickered again, stronger this time. Victor picked up his phone and pulled up her contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. He could go to their bedroom. He could wake her up. He could say something, anything, that might bridge the canyon that had opened between them. Instead, he grabbed his keys. The Aston Martin purred to life in the private garage, responding to his touch the way everything in his world did. Everything except Isabella. The drive across town took 20 minutes through rain-slicked streets that belonged to him in every way that mattered. The nightclub was one of his, upscale, exclusive, the kind of place where discretion was currency and everyone knew not to ask questions. Lena was waiting at the bar, exactly where she'd said she'd be. "Thought you'd stood me up," she said, sliding off her stool with a smile that was all teeth and danger. 28, blonde, wearing a dress that was more suggestion than clothing. Everything about her was loud, her laugh, her perfume, the way she moved through space like she was entitled to every inch of it. "I don't stand people up," Victor said, signaling the bartender for his usual. "I just show up when I want to. See, that's what I like about you." Lena leaned closer, her hand finding his thigh with practiced ease. "You're honest about being an asshole." It was the kind of comment that should have been insulting but somehow wasn't, because Lena understood the rules of whatever this was between them. No promises, no expectations, just mutual attraction and the thrill of doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. They'd met 3 months ago at a business function. She was someone's daughter or niece or mistress. Victor couldn't remember and didn't care. What mattered was the way she'd looked at him across the room, like he was a challenge she wanted to conquer. She'd approached him directly, no games, and said, "I bet you're bored out of your mind at this thing." She was right. It had started as conversation, progressed to drinks, evolved into something physical, with the kind of inevitability that Victor told himself was just biology. Isabella was pregnant, uncomfortable, always tired. Lena was available, enthusiastic, uncomplicated. Or at least that's what he told himself on nights like this, when he chose the gleaming bar and Lena's sharp laugh over his wife's quiet presence at home. "You're thinking too much," Lena said, trailing her fingers up his arm. "I can literally see your brain working. Stop it. I'm always thinking. That's why I run this city." "You don't run me." She finished her drink in one swallow, her eyes never leaving his. Not yet, anyway. The challenge was implicit, the invitation even more so. Victor should have gone home. He should have climbed into bed next to his pregnant wife and tried to remember what it felt like to be the man she'd fallen in love with. Instead, he followed Lena out the back entrance and into the night. The hotel was expensive and anonymous, the kind of place that catered to people who needed both luxury and discretion. Lena was already half undressed by the time Victor closed the door, dropping her dress like it was a challenge. Everything with her was a challenge, a dare, a test to see how far he'd go. "You're not going to get boring on me, are you?" she asked, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "Because I get bored easily." Victor loosened his tie, watching her silhouette against the glass. "What do you want from me, Lena?" "What do I want?" She turned, and her smile was wicked. "I want you to stop pretending you're conflicted. You're here. You chose this. Own it." She wasn't wrong. Victor had made a choice the moment he picked up his keys instead of calling Isabella. He'd made a choice every time he worked late, every time he walked out mid-conversation, every time he treated his wife like furniture that happened to be in the room. "Come here," Lena said, and it was a command, not a request. Victor crossed the room, and for the next few hours he let himself be someone who didn't think about consequences, someone who took what he wanted without worrying about the cost. Someone who lived in the moment instead of building empires and maintaining power and carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. It was almost 3 a.m. when Lena emerged from the bathroom, her hair still damp from the shower. She found her phone on the nightstand and started scrolling through something, completely comfortable with her own nakedness. "I should get going," Victor said, already reaching for his clothes. This was the part where it usually ended. Quick exit, no lingering, both of them returning to their separate lives. "Take a photo with me first," Lena said casually, holding up her phone. "What?" "A photo. You know, that thing where we both look at the camera and smile." She was already positioning herself next to him, her bare shoulder against his chest. "Come on, don't be boring." "I don't do photos." Victor moved to stand up, but Lena caught his arm. Why not? Afraid of evidence? Her smile turned challenging. I thought Victor DeLuca wasn't afraid of anything. I'm not afraid. Then prove it. She held the phone up, angling it for a selfie. One picture, unless you're scared. It was a stupid dare, the kind of thing that shouldn't have mattered. But there was something in Lena's tone, that edge of mockery, that implication that he was weak, that got under his skin. Victor DeLuca didn't back down from challenges. He built his reputation on never showing fear. Fine, he said. One photo. Lena's smile widened in triumph. She positioned the phone, and Victor found himself looking at their reflection in the screen. Him, shirtless, clearly in a hotel room. Lena, obviously undressed, draped against him with proprietary confidence. Anyone looking at this photo would know exactly what it was. Proof of an affair, evidence of betrayal. A message that couldn't be misunderstood. The camera clicked. Perfect, Lena said, studying the image. We look good together. Victor watched her fingers moving across the screen, already losing interest. It was just a photo, just pixels. It didn't mean anything. Send it to me, Lena said suddenly. What? Send the photo to me. From your phone. She was looking at him with that challenging glint again. You took it, so you send it, unless you're chicken. Why would I? Because I dared you to. Lena handed him her phone, showing him the photo. And because you said Victor DeLuca isn't afraid of anything, so prove it. Send it to me from your phone so I have it from your number. Make it official. It was stupid. It was reckless. It was the kind of thing a smart man would refuse. But Victor had spent the entire evening being dared, challenged, pushed to prove he was fearless. And he was fearless. He'd built an empire on that reputation. He wasn't going to let some 28-year-old woman make him look weak. He pulled out his phone, took the photo from her screen, and prepared to send it. His contact list opened automatically, and there at the top, because the universe had a sick sense of humor, was Isabella's name. My wife. With a heart emoji she'd added herself back when they still used words like love and meant them. Victor's thumb hovered over the screen. Send it to Lena. That was the plan. That was what made sense. But Lena was watching him with that smug expression, like she already knew he wouldn't do it. Like she'd won some game he didn't even know they were playing. What's the matter? She asked, having second thoughts. The challenge in her voice made the decision for him. Victor's thumb moved, selecting a contact, hitting send before his brain could fully process what he was doing. The message showed delivered. There, he said, tossing her phone back to her. Happy? Lena checked her phone, then frowned. I didn't get anything. Victor looked at his own screen and his blood went cold. The photo, him and Lena, obviously post-sex, clearly in a hotel room, had been sent to the contact directly above Lena's name in his recent list. My wife. Fuck, he breathed. What? Lena was looking at him now, her amusement fading. What's wrong? Victor stared at his phone, watching the message status change from delivered to read in real time. Across the city, in their penthouse bedroom, Isabella had just opened his message. She'd just seen the photo. For the first time in years, Victor DeLuca felt something close to genuine fear. Son. Isabella had been awake when the message came through. She was always awake these days, the baby pressed against her ribs in a way that made comfortable sleep impossible, her mind too full of worries to truly rest. She'd been lying in the dark of their bedroom, one hand on her swollen belly, trying not to think about the empty space next to her where Victor should have been. The phone buzzed on her nightstand, and she reached for it out of habit. Probably another message from her mother asking about the baby's nursery, or her friend Sophia sending late-night memes. Instead, it was from Victor. Her heart did that stupid, hopeful thing it still did sometimes, despite everything. Maybe he was apologizing for being distant. Maybe he was on his way home. Maybe he'd remembered what it felt like to be them. She opened the message. The photo loaded slowly, pixels arranging themselves into an image that would replay in her mind for the rest of her life. Victor, shirtless, his hair messed in a way that told a story. And next to him, draped against his chest with obvious intimacy, a blonde woman she'd never seen before. Both of them looking at the camera. Both of them smiling, not drunk, not apologetic, not ashamed, just smiling, like this was nothing. Like betraying his pregnant wife was so casual, it deserved documentation. Isabella stared at the screen until her eyes burned. Somewhere in the logical part of her brain, she knew she should be screaming. She should be throwing things. She should be calling Victor and demanding answers and making him feel even a fraction of the pain that was currently tearing through her chest like broken glass. But she'd been screaming into silence for 2 years now. She'd been demanding attention, begging for recognition, trying to make herself matter to a man who'd stopped seeing her as anything more than furniture. Screaming hadn't worked. So Isabella did something else, something that felt like stepping off a cliff and discovering she could fly. She took a screenshot of the photo, then she opened her phone's settings and started blocking Victor's number. She pulled up her brother's contact, Carlo, who'd begged her years ago to leave Victor, who'd seen this ending coming from miles away. The call connected on the second ring. "Bella?" Carlo's voice was thick with sleep. "What's wrong? Is it the baby?" "I need you to come get me," Isabella said. Her voice was steady, too steady, like she'd moved past emotion into some crystalline space where everything was clear and sharp and absolutely certain. "Now. Tonight. And don't tell anyone where we're going." "What happened?" "Victor sent me a photo." She could hear Carlo moving around, probably getting dressed, alert now. "He's with another woman. Right now. And he sent me a picture of them together." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. Then, "I'm on my way. Pack what you need. Don't tell him anything." "I won't." "Bella, are you okay?" Isabella looked down at her pregnant belly, at the ring on her finger that suddenly felt like a shackle, at the bedroom she decorated with hope and watched fill with loneliness. "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." She ended the call and started moving with purpose. The overnight bag came out of the closet. She packed underwear, comfortable clothes, her prenatal vitamins, the folder with her medical records. Nothing sentimental, nothing that would slow her down. This wasn't about taking things, it was about leaving. In the nursery, she paused. The crib stood ready, the mobile hung with careful attention, the walls painted a soft yellow that was supposed to be gender-neutral and cheerful. Victor had never even walked into this room, not once. She'd prepared their child's first home entirely alone, decorating for a future he couldn't be bothered to imagine. Isabella grabbed the baby book from the shelf, the only thing in this room she actually wanted, and kept moving. The hardest part was the kitchen. She stood at the counter where she'd spent countless hours preparing meals he didn't eat, trying to feed a marriage that had been starving to death. Her wedding ring caught the light from the city outside, the diamond that had meant forever on a day that felt like it belonged to different people. Isabella twisted the ring off her finger. It came away easily. She'd lost weight despite the pregnancy, worn down by stress and loneliness. She placed it carefully on the granite countertop, next to the refrigerator where tonight's uneaten pasta was wrapped in plastic. Then she pulled out a piece of paper and wrote 4 words. "Don't come looking for me." No explanation. No accusations. No emotion spilled across the page for him to misinterpret or dismiss. Just a boundary, clear and absolute. She was leaving the note on the counter when her phone buzzed. Carlo. "I'm outside. Building security let me up to the parking level." Isabella took one last look at the penthouse that had been her prison disguised as paradise. Every room held memories of trying to be enough for a man who'd stopped trying altogether. She could leave all of that here, along with the ring and the note and the version of herself who'd believed that love alone could save a marriage. The elevator ride down felt like traveling through time. By the time she reached the parking garage, she was already someone else. Not Victor DeLuca's wife, not the woman who made herself small to fit into his life, but someone she was about to discover. Carlo was waiting next to his car, his face carved with anger and concern. He pulled her into a hug carefully, mindful of her belly. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere he won't think to look," Isabella said. "Somewhere I can think." They drove out of the city in silence, leaving behind the glittering skyline that Victor owned. Isabella watched it disappear in the side mirror, and with it, the last 8 years of her life. She didn't cry. That would come later. Right now, she just felt incredibly, impossibly free. Victor made it home just after 5 a.m., his mind racing through damage control scenarios. He'd call Isabella. He'd explain it was an accident. He'd tell her it didn't mean anything. which was true in a way. Lena was nothing, a distraction, a mistake. But the photo, he'd never seen himself look that way before. Relaxed, smiling, genuinely engaged with another woman. It was a version of Victor that Isabella hadn't seen in years, and he'd sent it to her intentionally. No, accidentally. No, he'd sent it because Lena had dared him, and he'd been too arrogant to back down. There was no way to explain that without sounding like exactly the kind of man he'd become. The penthouse was dark when he entered. Too dark, too quiet. "Isabella?" His voice echoed off the high ceilings. Nothing. Victor moved through the rooms, noticing small absences that added up to something terrible. Her phone charger was gone from the nightstand, the overnight bag missing from the closet. In the nursery, which he now entered for the first time, the baby book was gone from the shelf. On the kitchen counter, next to the refrigerator, he found her wedding ring and the note. 4 words that hit harder than any of the threats he'd received in his criminal career. "Don't come looking for me." Victor picked up the ring, feeling its weight in his palm. He remembered buying it, remembered the day he'd proposed, remembered thinking he'd found the one person in his life who saw him as something more than a weapon or a wallet. He'd been right. She had seen him as more, and he'd rewarded that vision by sending her a photo of himself fucking another woman. His phone was in his hand before he realized what he was doing, pulling up her contact, hitting call. It went straight to voicemail. She'd blocked him. He tried texting. Message failed to deliver. Blocked. Completely. Victor stood in his empty kitchen as the sun started rising over the city he controlled, holding his wife's wedding ring and realizing he'd just lost the only thing that had ever been truly his. Not through violence, not through betrayal by an enemy, not through any of the dangers he'd spent his life protecting against. He'd lost her because of a photo, because of arrogance, because he'd stopped trying and assumed she'd always be there, waiting in the shadows of his life. For the first time since building his empire, Victor DeLuca had no idea what to do next. The city outside his windows gleamed with morning light, beautiful and indifferent. His empire was intact, his power undimmed, his reputation secure, and he had never felt so utterly, completely alone. The first call Victor made after discovering Isabella was gone went to Marco, his head of security. The second went to his attorney. The third to a private investigator who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. By noon, he had a small army of people searching for his pregnant wife, and by evening, he had exactly nothing to show for it. "She's completely off-grid," Marco reported, standing in Victor's study with the uncomfortable posture of a man delivering bad news to someone who didn't handle bad news well. No credit card activity, no phone pings. Her brother Carlo picked her up from the parking garage at 3:47 a.m., and after that, nothing. They could be anywhere. Victor stared at the security footage on his laptop, grainy black and white images of Isabella walking to Carlo's car with one small bag. She moved carefully, one hand supporting her belly, and even in the poor quality video, he could see the determined set of her shoulders. "What about Carlo's place?" "Already checked. Empty. I've got guys watching it, but..." Marco shrugged. "Boss, if they don't want to be found, we're not finding them. Not unless they make a mistake." "Everyone makes mistakes." Victor's voice was flat, controlled. Inside, something was screaming, but he'd spent decades learning not to show weakness. "Keep looking." After Marco left, Victor sat alone in his study, the same room where he'd ignored Isabella's dinner invitation just 24 hours ago. The plate she'd mentioned, the pasta he hadn't wanted, was still in the refrigerator, wrapped carefully in plastic. He'd found it this morning and stood staring at it like it was evidence at a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. Evidence of all the small ways he'd killed their marriage. His phone buzzed. For a split second, hope flared. Maybe Isabella. Maybe a message. Maybe a chance to explain. Instead, it was Lena. "Are we still on for tonight?" Victor deleted the message without responding. Then he deleted her contact entirely. Then he poured himself a drink he didn't actually want and tried to figure out when, exactly, everything had gone so completely wrong. The truth was, he couldn't pinpoint a single moment. It had been gradual, a slow erosion of the man he'd been when he married Isabella. Back then, he'd been hungry to prove himself, climbing the ranks of his uncle's organization with intelligence and ruthlessness in equal measure. Isabella had been a waitress at a restaurant he owned, and she'd looked at him like he was just a man, not a criminal or a commodity. You always order the same thing, she'd said one night, setting down his usual whiskey. Don't you get bored? I know what I like. Or you're afraid to try something new. Her smile had been challenging, playful. What if there's something better and you're missing it because you're stuck in a routine? He'd ended up trying her recommendation, some cocktail with too many ingredients and a ridiculous name. It had been terrible, and they'd both laughed about it. Then he'd asked her to dinner, and she'd said yes. And 6 months later, he'd been standing in a church promising to love her forever. He'd meant it then. Victor drained his glass and poured another. The problem was that he'd also meant all the other promises he'd made. To his uncle, to the organization, to the network of criminals and corrupt officials who expected Victor DeLuca to be harder, colder, more ruthless than anyone else. You couldn't build an empire by being soft. You couldn't command respect by showing vulnerability. So he'd stopped being vulnerable. He'd stopped being soft. And somewhere in that transformation, he'd stopped being the man Isabella married. His phone rang. Marco again. What? Boss, we've got a problem. Romano's making moves. Word on the street is he thinks you're distracted, and he's pushing into the waterfront territory. Victor closed his eyes. Of course. Blood in the water, sharks circling. This was how it worked. Show one moment of weakness, and everyone came for you. Handle it. How do you want me to set? I said handle it, Marco. I don't care how. Just make it clear that I'm not distracted and Romano's about to find out why people fear me. He ended the call and immediately regretted the tone. Marco was loyal, had been for 15 years, and didn't deserve Victor's anger. But everything felt wrong. The empty penthouse, the missing wife, the wedding ring that was still sitting on the kitchen counter because he couldn't bring himself to move it. The next 3 days passed in a blur of business and searching. Victor threw himself into work with the kind of intensity that made his associates nervous. He was harsher than usual, quicker to anger, less patient with incompetence. 2 guys who'd been skimming from the gambling operations found themselves with broken hands. A corrupt cop who'd been late with information found his protection revoked. You're scaring people, his underboss Tony said on the 4th day, cornering Victor in the private booth of one of their clubs. And not the good kind of scared, the kind where they start thinking maybe it's time to switch teams. Then they can switch teams and see how that works out for them. Victor. Tony leaned forward, his voice dropping. What the hell is going on with you? This thing with your wife is none of your business. It is when it affects business. You're off. Everyone can see it, and when you're off, the whole organization is vulnerable. Victor wanted to argue, but Tony was right. He was off. He couldn't focus, couldn't sleep, kept checking his phone for messages that never came. The penthouse felt like a mausoleum, every room echoing with Isabella's absence. I'm handling it, Victor said. Yeah? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're falling apart. The accusation stung because it was true. Victor DeLuca, who'd survived assassination attempts and federal investigations and gang wars, was being destroyed by his wife's silence. No threats, no demands, just the simple act of leaving, and it had broken something in him he didn't know could break. That night, alone in the penthouse, Victor found himself in the nursery again. Isabella had done everything herself, picked the furniture, painted the walls, hung the little pictures of animals and stars. There was a rocking chair in the corner, and Victor sat in it, feeling ridiculous and lost. His phone rang. Unknown number. Yeah? Mr. DeLuca? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm an obstetrician at St. Mary's Hospital. Your wife is here. Victor was on his feet before she finished the sentence. Is she okay? Is the baby? They're both fine. But I'm calling because Mrs. DeLuca is refusing to list any emergency contact, and hospital policy requires I'm on my way. Mr. DeLuca, I should tell you that your wife was very clear she doesn't want to see you. I'm only calling because... Victor was already grabbing his keys. Which room? Sir, I really don't think... Which room? The doctor sighed. She's in the emergency department, bed 7. But security has instructions not to... Victor ended the call and was out the door in seconds. The drive to St. Mary's took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. His mind raced through scenarios, something wrong with the baby, complications, an accident. She was okay. The doctor had said they were both okay. But why was she at the hospital? The emergency department was controlled chaos when he arrived. Nurses moving between beds, monitors beeping, the smell of antiseptic and fear. Victor scanned the area until he found bed 7, partially hidden behind a curtain. And there she was. Isabella sat on the edge of the hospital bed, changed into a gown, one hand protectively over her belly. She looked tired, her face pale, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, but alive, present, real in a way that the empty penthouse had made her feel like a ghost. She saw him at the exact same moment, and her expression closed off completely. "No," she said, loud enough that a nearby nurse looked over. "Absolutely not. Bella, I just want to make sure you're okay. I'm fine. The baby's fine. You can leave." Victor stepped closer to the curtain, and Isabella stood up, putting the bed between them like a barrier. A security guard appeared from somewhere, hand on his radio. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm her husband, and she doesn't want you here." The guard was polite but firm. "Please don't make this difficult. Bella, please, just let me. You sent me a photo of you with another woman." Isabella's voice was steady, almost conversational, which was somehow worse than if she'd been screaming. "You smiled in it. Do you remember that part? You were smiling." The emergency department seemed to get quieter. People were watching now, pretending not to, while absolutely listening to every word. "It was a mistake," Victor said. "A stupid, careless mistake. I wasn't thinking. You weren't thinking about me. I know. You haven't thought about me in years." Isabella looked at the security guard. "Please make him leave." "Ma'am, are you sure? If you want to talk to him." "I don't." The finality in her voice was like a door slamming. Victor found himself being escorted out of the emergency department by 2 security guards, and he went because making a scene would only make things worse. But at the exit, he turned back, catching one last glimpse of Isabella through the gap in the curtain. She was crying now, silently, one hand pressed to her mouth. A nurse had appeared with a box of tissues, and another woman, older, kind-faced, was rubbing Isabella's back while she sobbed. Victor had done that to her. Reduced his wife to tears in a hospital emergency department while strangers comforted her. Outside in the parking lot, he stood next to his car and tried to remember how to breathe. His phone buzzed. Marco, with some update about Romano that Victor couldn't process. He ignored it. Ignored the next call too, and the one after that. Finally, he called Tony. "I need you to handle things for a few days." "Handle what things?" "Everything. All of it. I don't care what comes up. You make the decisions." Silence. Then, "Victor, what's going on?" "I'm taking time off." "You don't take time off. Ever. Not in 15 years. "Well, I'm taking it now." Victor's voice cracked slightly, and he hated himself for it. "Can you do it or not?" Yeah, I can do it." Tony's voice softened. "You gonna be okay?" Victor looked back at the hospital, at the lit windows where his wife was being cared for by strangers because he'd forfeited the right to care for her himself. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm going to try to fix it anyway." He ended the call and drove back to the penthouse, where Isabella's wedding ring was still sitting on the counter, and the nursery was still waiting for a child whose parents were falling apart before it was even born. Victor picked up the ring and held it up to the light, watching it sparkle. Then he did something he hadn't done in longer than he could remember. He went into their bedroom, lay down on Isabella's side of the bed where her scent still lingered faintly on the pillow, and let himself fall apart. The crying started as a tightness in his chest, then evolved into something uglier, harsh, choking sobs that he muffled against the pillow, because even now, even alone, he couldn't stand the idea of being weak. But the tears came anyway, for the wife he'd lost and the man he'd become, and the baby who deserved better than a father who'd chosen ego over family. When it finally stopped, Victor felt hollowed out but slightly clearer. Crying hadn't fixed anything. It hadn't brought Isabella back, but it had cracked something open inside him that had been sealed shut for too long. His phone was full of missed calls and messages, business that needed attention, problems that required solutions, an empire that demanded its king. Victor ignored all of it. Instead, he got up, went to the nursery, and started trying to understand what his wife had been doing for the past 7 months while he'd been too busy to notice. The crib had instructions, still in the box. The mobile needed batteries. The changing table was only partially assembled. She'd done all of this alone. prepared for their child alone, hoped alone. Victor had never assembled furniture in his life. He had people for that. But he opened the crib instructions and started reading, because maybe this was where fixing things had to start. Not with grand gestures or explanations, but with actually being present for the life he'd created. 3 hours later, he had a partially assembled crib, several stripped screws, and bleeding knuckles from where the Allen wrench had slipped. It was terrible, frustrating work, and he hated every minute of it. But he kept going. The next morning, Victor woke up on the nursery floor, surrounded by instruction manuals and parts. His back ached, his hands hurt. The crib was maybe 60% assembled and probably wouldn't pass any safety inspection. He got up, made coffee, and kept working. Around noon, his phone rang. Dr. Chen again. Mr. DeLuca, I wanted to let you know that your wife is being discharged. She had some early contractions, but everything's stable now. She needs rest and to avoid stress. Where is she going? I can't tell you that, sir, but I wanted you to know she and the baby are healthy. She asked me to tell you that she's fine and you should stop looking for her. I can't do that. I understand, but I'm asking you, as her doctor, to consider what's best for her health right now. The stress of this situation isn't good for the pregnancy. If you care about her and the baby, I do care. The words came out rougher than Victor intended. That's why I need to talk to her. Then maybe show her that by respecting her boundaries. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. Give her space, let her breathe, and when she's ready, if she's ready, she'll reach out. And if she's not ready, then you'll have your answer. The call ended, and Victor stood in the half-finished nursery, holding his phone and facing a truth he'd spent his entire adult life avoiding. There were some things he couldn't control, some problems he couldn't solve with money or threats or force of will. His wife had left him, and no amount of power could make her come back. The only thing he could control was himself, who he was, who he chose to be going forward. Victor looked at the disaster of the crib assembly, at the nursery Isabella had created with hope and love, while he'd been somewhere else with someone else, and made a decision. He called Marco. I need you to do something for me. Find out where Isabella's medical bills are being sent. The hospital, the obstetrician, all of it. I want them paid. Anonymously. She doesn't need to know it's from me. Boss, that's not exactly anonymous if you're the husband. Then figure it out. Set up a foundation or something. Just make sure she's taken care of. Okay. Anything else? Victor looked around the nursery. Yeah, I need the name of someone who can finish assembling a crib without making it look like a death trap. Marco actually laughed. You're assembling furniture now. Apparently I'm terrible at it, but I'm going to learn. After he hung up, Victor went back to the instructions, determined to figure out what he'd done wrong. It took another 4 hours and a YouTube video tutorial, but eventually the crib stood mostly straight, mostly sturdy, and only slightly lopsided. It wasn't perfect. It probably wasn't even good, but it was finished, and Victor had done it himself instead of delegating it to someone else. Small steps. That's what Dr. Chen had said. Show Isabella who he could be, not through words, but through actions. Victor picked up his phone and opened a new note, started typing. Things I did wrong. Stopped paying attention, made her feel invisible, chose work over her, chose other women over her. Sent that fucking photo. He stared at the list. It felt inadequate, incomplete, but it was a start. Then he started a second list. Things I need to change. Be present. Listen. Show up. Mean it when I say sorry. Become someone worthy of being a father. That list felt even more inadequate. But again, a start. Victor saved both lists and looked around the nursery. The crib was done. The mobile was hung. The changing table still needed work. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was redemption. His phone buzzed with messages from Tony, business things, territory things, problems that needed the boss's attention. Victor read them, and for the first time in his career, sent back a single message. Handle it. I trust you. Then he put his phone on silent, picked up the changing table instructions, and got back to work. Outside the nursery window, the city stretched out in all its complicated glory, Victor's empire, his territory, his kingdom. From up here, it looked peaceful, almost beautiful. But Victor knew the truth. Cities were made of people making choices, and he'd made nothing but bad ones for too long. The changing table fought him just as hard as the crib had. Screws that didn't fit, pieces that seemed designed for someone with 3 hands, instructions that might as well have been written in code. But Victor kept working, his hands steady despite the frustration, his focus absolute. Because this was what love looked like now. Not grand romantic gestures or expensive gifts, just a man learning how to build furniture for a child he might never get to raise, trying to become someone different than who he'd been. The sun was setting by the time he finished. The changing table stood complete, functional, only slightly wobbly. Victor tested it, making sure it could hold weight, and felt something close to pride. Then he sat in the rocking chair and looked at what he'd created. A nursery, a space for new life, a room that Isabella had dreamed into existence and Victor had finally contributed to. It wasn't enough. It wouldn't bring her back. But it was something real, something he'd made with his own hands instead of delegating or buying or controlling. His phone lit up with another call, unknown number. Victor almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Yeah? It's Carlo. Isabella's brother's voice was cold, controlled. I'm calling because Bella asked me to. She wants you to stop having people look for her. I need to know she's safe. She is safe. Away from you. Carlo's contempt was clear. You sent her a photo of you with another woman, Victor, while she's pregnant with your kid. What the hell is wrong with you? I know what I did. Victor closed his eyes. Can I talk to her, just for a minute? She doesn't want to talk to you. Then can you tell her something for me? Can you tell her I'm sorry? You think sorry fixes this? No, but it's true anyway. Victor stood up, pacing the small nursery. Tell her I assembled the crib and the changing table. Tell her I'm trying to understand what she was doing all these months while I was ignoring her. Silence. Then, you assembled furniture? Badly. It's probably going to fall apart, but I did it myself. More silence. Victor could hear muffled voices in the background. Carlo talking to someone, probably Isabella. Finally, she says, good luck with the mobile. It's harder than it looks. Something in Victor's chest cracked open. The mobile's done. I figured it out. She says there's batteries in the kitchen drawer, third one down. Tell her thank you. Victor. Carlo's voice got serious again. I'm going to say this once. My sister deserves better than what you gave her. And that baby deserves a father who actually shows up. If you're serious about changing, prove it. Don't call. Don't look for her. Just be better. And maybe if you actually become someone worth knowing, she'll find you. The line went dead. Victor stood alone in the nursery, holding his phone, replaying Carlo's words. Be better. Such simple advice. Such impossible execution. But what else was there to do? He went to the kitchen, found the batteries in the third drawer down exactly where Isabella had said, and brought them back to the nursery. The mobile lit up and started playing a soft lullaby when he installed them, casting little stars across the ceiling. Victor sat in the rocking chair and watched the stars spin, listening to the music, and made himself a promise. He would be better. Not for Isabella. She might never come back. Not even for the baby. He might never earn the right to be its father. But for himself. Because the man he'd become was someone he couldn't stand to be anymore. The city outside kept moving, indifferent to one man's personal crisis. Somewhere in it, Isabella was resting, healing, preparing to bring new life into a world that had just fallen apart. And here, in a nursery filled with furniture he'd assembled with bleeding hands, Victor DeLuca began the slow, painful work of becoming someone different. The mobile kept spinning, the lullaby kept playing, and Victor kept his vigil, watching stars dance across the ceiling of a room he should have helped create months ago. Small steps. That's all he had. Small steps toward becoming someone worthy of the family he'd destroyed. Outside, night fell over the city, and Victor sat in the dark, listening to a lullaby meant for a child who might never know him, and tried to figure out how to build a life the same way he'd built that crib. One piece at a time, even when it hurt, even when he didn't know what he was doing. It was a start. It had to be enough. 3 weeks passed like a slow bleed. Victor kept his promise. He didn't search for Isabella, didn't have Marco tail Carlo, didn't use any of the resources at his disposal to track down his wife. It went against every instinct he'd honed over decades of controlling situations, but he did it anyway because Carlo was right. Being better meant respecting her choice, even when it killed him. Instead, he focused on things he could control. The nursery got finished properly. He hired someone to fix his mistakes, but only after he'd tried himself. He read books about pregnancy and childbirth that made him realize how little he'd known about what Isabella was going through. He started seeing a therapist, which felt ridiculous at first, Victor DeLuca on a couch talking about his feelings. But Dr. Patricia Morrison didn't treat him like a crime boss. She treated him like a man who'd fucked up his life and wanted to understand why. "Tell me about the photo," she said during their third session. Victor had been dreading this question. "I was with another woman. She dared me to send it. I did." "Why?" "Because she challenged me, said I was afraid. And you couldn't let that stand." "I don't show weakness." Even as he said it, Victor heard how hollow it sounded. Dr. Morrison leaned back in her chair. "Tell me what you think weakness is." "Backing down, showing fear, letting people see they got to you." "Interesting. So sending a photo that destroyed your marriage, that was strength?" The question landed like a punch. Victor sat with it, feeling the discomfort of actually examining his choices instead of justifying them. "No," he finally said, "it was the stupidest thing I've ever done. Because I let someone I didn't even care about manipulate me into hurting the person I did care about. Because I chose ego over everything that mattered." Dr. Morrison nodded. "That's the most honest thing you've said since you walked in here." The sessions continued twice a week, and slowly Victor started to understand the architecture of his own destruction. How he'd conflated strength with emotional distance. How he'd treated love like a transaction instead of a living thing that needed care. How he'd become so focused on building an empire that he'd forgotten why he started building it in the first place. "I wanted to give her everything," he told Dr. Morrison during week 4. A house, security, a life where she never had to worry. "Did you ask her what she wanted?" Victor opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth was, he hadn't asked Isabella what she wanted in years. He'd decided what was best and expected her to be grateful. "She wanted me," he said quietly. "Just me. And I gave her everything except that." The realization sat heavy in his chest for days after. He'd been so busy providing that he'd forgotten to be present, so focused on building a kingdom that he'd lost sight of building a home. Business continued without him being fully present, which was its own revelation. Tony handled things competently, and the organization didn't collapse just because Victor wasn't micromanaging every decision. Romano had tested boundaries once, gotten slapped down hard, and retreated. The other families maintained their distance. Money kept flowing. Victor still went to meetings, still made the big decisions, but he'd stopped living at the office. Stopped using work as an excuse to avoid going home. The penthouse was still empty, still echoed with Isabella's absence, but he'd stopped running from that emptiness. Instead, he sat with it, let it teach him what loss felt like, when you couldn't fix it with power. One Thursday evening, his phone rang. Carlo again. "She had the baby," Carlo said without preamble. "A girl. Both of them are healthy." Victor's hand tightened around the phone. "When?" "This morning. Natural birth, no complications, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. A daughter. He had a daughter. Victor tried to process it, but the information felt too big, too real, too everything. "Is Isabella okay?" "Tired, but yeah, she's okay." Carlo's voice softened slightly. "The baby's beautiful, Victor. Looks like Bella." "Can I—" Victor stopped, swallowed hard. "Can I see them?" "I don't know. That's up to Isabella." There was a pause. "She knows I'm calling you. She didn't ask me to, but she didn't tell me not to either. Read into that what you will." "What hospital?" "I'm not telling you that. If she wants you there, she'll let you know." Carlo sighed. "Look, I hate you for what you did to my sister, but you're still that kid's father. So I'm telling you this because you deserve to know you have a daughter. What you do with that information is on you." The line went dead. Victor sat in his study, staring at his phone, trying to wrap his mind around fatherhood. He had a daughter. Somewhere in the city, there was a tiny person who carried his DNA, who would grow up with his last name, who he might never get to know. The thought was unbearable. He grabbed his keys, then stopped. Carlo had specifically not told him the hospital. Isabella knew he was being informed but hadn't asked to see him. Showing up uninvited would be exactly the kind of controlling behavior Dr. Morrison had been helping him recognize. Victor put the keys down and picked up his phone instead, opened a new message to the number Carlo had called from. "Thank you for telling me. Please let Isabella know I'm respecting her boundaries, and that I'm here whenever she's ready. If she's ready." He sent it before he could second-guess himself, then sat back and waited for a response that didn't come. The next morning, Victor woke up to a text from an unknown number. Just an address, a small house in a quiet suburb 40 minutes outside the city. No explanation, no name, nothing else. He knew what it was anyway. The drive took 35 minutes through morning traffic. Victor's hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing. What would he say? What if Isabella took one look at him and told him to leave? What if his daughter was right there and he couldn't even hold her? The house was modest, a 2-story colonial with a small front yard and a maple tree that was just starting to turn colors. Carlo's car was in the driveway. Victor parked on the street and sat there for 5 minutes, building up the nerve to walk to that front door. Finally, he got out, walked up the path, rang the bell. Carlo answered, his face neutral. "She's in the living room. Don't make me regret this." The living room was small, comfortable, nothing like the penthouse. Isabella sat on the couch, and Victor's breath caught because she looked exhausted and beautiful and holding a tiny bundle wrapped in yellow blankets. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "Hi," Isabella finally said. Her voice was hoarse, probably from labor. "Hi." Victor stayed by the doorway, afraid to come closer without permission. "How are you feeling?" "Like I just pushed a human out of my body." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "It's not as fun as the books make it sound." "I'm sorry I wasn't there." "You weren't invited." No anger in her voice, just fact. Victor nodded, accepting that. "Carlo said she's beautiful. You want to meet her?" Everything in him screamed yes, but he forced himself to ask, "Do you want me to?" Isabella looked down at the baby, then back at him. "I don't know what I want from you, Victor. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm exhausted, but she's yours too, and I'm not cruel enough to keep you from your daughter." She shifted slightly, and Victor saw the wince of pain. "You can come closer. I'm not going to bite you." Victor crossed the room slowly, like he was approaching something sacred. Isabella adjusted the blanket, and there she was. A tiny face, eyes closed, perfect miniature features. Dark hair, Isabella's nose, a mouth shaped like a rosebud. "She doesn't have a name yet," Isabella said quietly. "I couldn't decide without... I don't know. It felt wrong to name her without you. You have every right to name her whatever you want." "I know, but she's half yours, even if you're an asshole." Isabella looked up at him, and her eyes were wet. "I thought about your grandmother's name, Elena, if you're okay with that." Victor's grandmother had raised him after his parents died, had been the only person who'd believed he could be more than a criminal. She'd died hoping he'd leave the life, and he'd disappointed her by diving deeper into it. "Elena?" he repeated, and something in his chest broke open. "Yeah, that's perfect. You can hold her if you want." Victor's hand shook as he reached out. Isabella transferred their daughter carefully, showing him how to support her head, and then he was holding Elena, and nothing in his entire life had prepared him for this feeling. She was so small, so fragile, so completely dependent on adults who were supposed to know what they were doing. Victor looked down at her tiny face and felt the weight of every mistake he'd ever made. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and he wasn't sure if he was talking to Elena or Isabella or both. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix things," Isabella said, but her voice was gentle. "It's just words, Victor." "I know, but I mean it anyway." He couldn't take his eyes off Elena. "I've been trying to change. I know it doesn't erase what I did. I know it doesn't make up for sending that photo or ignoring you or being the worst husband in history. But I'm trying." "Why? Because I left?" "Because I finally saw what I'd become." Victor looked at Isabella, and for once he let her see everything, the regret, the pain, the desperate hope. "I saw myself through your eyes that night, and I hated what I saw." Isabella was quiet for a long moment. Elena made a small sound, like a sigh, and Victor instinctively adjusted his hold, bringing her closer to his chest. "You're a natural," Isabella said, and there was something complicated in her voice. "I thought you'd be terrible at this." "I might be. I've never held a baby before." "Never?" "Never wanted to. Babies were something other people had." Victor looked down at Elena. "But this one's mine, ours, and I want to be good at it." "Wanting isn't enough." "I know, but it's a start." He gently rocked Elena, watching her little eyelids flutter. "I assembled the nursery. Well, I tried to. Then I had to hire someone to fix what I broke. But I tried first." Isabella's expression shifted, something that might have been surprise. "You assembled furniture?" "Badly. Very badly." "But, yeah." Victor met her eyes. "I read all those pregnancy books you left around the house, the ones I ignored before. Did you know your feet swell in the 3rd trimester? And that you're not supposed to eat deli meat?" "I tried to tell you that once. You walked out of the room." "I know. I'm sorry." He paused. "I'm saying that a lot. Sorry. It probably sounds empty." "It does," Isabella agreed, "but at least you're saying it." They sat in silence for a while, just the 3 of them in that small living room. Victor held his daughter and tried to memorize everything, the weight of her, the soft sound of her breathing, the way her tiny hand had curled into a fist against his chest. "I'm seeing a therapist," he said eventually, "Dr. Patricia Morrison, twice a week. She's helping me understand why I'm such a disaster." Isabella's eyebrows rose. "You're in therapy?" "Yeah, turns out I have control issues and I use work to avoid emotional intimacy." Victor smiled ruefully. "Who knew?" "I knew. I tried to tell you for years." "I should have listened." "Yes, you should have." Isabella shifted on the couch, wincing again. "But you didn't, and here we are." "Where is here exactly?" Victor asked quietly. "What happens now?" "I don't know." Isabella's voice was honest, raw. "I want to hate you. Part of me does hate you, but another part of me sees you holding our daughter and remembers why I fell in love with you in the first place." "And what part wins?" "Neither. Both." "I don't know, Victor. I just gave birth 12 hours ago. I'm tired and sore and my emotions are all over the place." She wiped at her eyes. "You hurt me. Really, really hurt me. And I don't know if I can get past that." "I understand." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you spent our entire marriage not understanding anything about how I felt." The words stung because they were true. Victor looked down at Elena, gathering courage from her tiny presence. "You're right. I didn't understand. I thought providing for you was the same as loving you. I thought being powerful meant being distant. I thought—" He trailed off, then started again. "I thought a lot of stupid things, and I'm trying to unlearn them." "That's great, Victor, really. But trying isn't the same as doing." Isabella's voice was steady, but tired. "You can't just decide to be a better person and expect me to forget everything that came before. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm different. And if I'm not ready to give you that chance?" Victor looked at his daughter, then at his wife, the woman he'd married and ignored and betrayed. The woman who'd still let him into this room, still let him hold their child, even after everything he'd done. "Then I wait," he said, "however long it takes. And I keep being better, not because I'm trying to win you back, but because it's the right thing to do." Isabella studied him for a long moment. "I want to believe you." "But you don't." "I want to. That's different." She held out her arms. "I should probably feed her soon." Victor carefully transferred Elena back to Isabella, and the loss of that small weight against his chest felt enormous. He watched Isabella settle their daughter, saw the practiced ease of her movements, and realized she'd already been doing this alone for hours, while he was just learning. "Can I come back?" he asked. "To see her. To see both of you." "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Please. I'm not asking to move back in or fix everything. I just want to be part of her life." "Part of both your lives, if you'll let me." Isabella was quiet, focused on positioning Elena for feeding. Finally, she said, "You can come back, but not to the penthouse. Here, and only when I say it's okay. And if you screw up even once, if you bring your work, your drama, any of that life into this house, you're done. Understand? I understand. I mean it, Victor. No second chances this time. You get one shot to be a decent father. Don't waste it. I won't. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Victor saw all the history between them in that gaze, the love and disappointment, the hope and betrayal, the complicated mess of 8 years together. You should go, she said softly. Elena needs to eat, and I need to rest. Victor stood, feeling like he was leaving something vital behind. Thank you for letting me meet her, for even talking to me. Don't thank me, just be better. Isabella's voice was firm. And Victor, that means no more women, no more photos, no more choosing everything else over your family. You want to be part of this? Then actually be part of it. I will. I promise. Your promises don't mean much to me right now. Show me through actions. Carlo appeared in the doorway, clearly having been listening. I'll walk you out. Victor took one last look at Isabella and Elena, his wife and daughter, his family, the life he'd almost destroyed completely. Then he followed Carlo to the door. Outside on the porch, Carlo stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. I'm watching you, Carlo said. You hurt her again, and I don't care how powerful you are. We clear? Crystal. Good. Carlo's grip tightened. She's my sister. That baby's my niece. They deserve better than what you gave them. I know. Then prove it. Not with words, with who you are every single day. Carlo released him. And Victor? The fact that she let you in that house at all? That's more than you deserve. Don't make her regret it. Victor drove back to the city in a daze, his mind replaying every moment, holding Elena, seeing Isabella, the tentative permission to be part of their lives. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was a door cracked open instead of slammed shut. That night, alone in the penthouse, Victor sat in the nursery he'd assembled and looked at the empty crib. Tomorrow he'd move it to the house where Isabella and Elena were. Tomorrow he'd start proving through actions instead of words that he could be different. But tonight, he let himself feel the full weight of what he'd almost lost. A daughter he might never have met. A wife who'd had every reason to cut him out completely. A family that existed despite him instead of because of him. His phone buzzed, a text from the unknown number. Her full name is Elena Marie De Luca. Thought you should know. Below it, a photo. Isabella holding Elena, both of them sleeping, peaceful in a way that made Victor's chest ache. He saved the photo, then sent back a simple response. Thank you. For everything. The reply came quickly. Don't thank me. Just show up. Every day. No excuses. Victor looked at the photo again, then at the empty nursery, then out at the city that had demanded so much of him for so long. For the first time in his life, the city felt less important than the tiny house 40 minutes away where his daughter was sleeping and his wife was giving him a chance he absolutely didn't deserve. He'd spent decades building an empire. Now he had to learn how to build a family. The empire had been easier, but Elena Marie De Luca was worth every impossible step ahead. Victor stood up, turned off the nursery light, and went to his laptop. Started making plans, not for territory or money or power, but for doctor's appointments and visiting schedules and all the boring normal things that came with being a father. It felt strange, uncomfortable, completely outside his expertise. He did it anyway, because wanting to be better was just the start. Actually, being better required work, the kind of work that didn't come with immediate rewards or clear victories. Just the slow daily effort of showing up and trying and failing and trying again. Victor had never backed down from a challenge in his life. He wasn't about to start now. Even if this challenge was the hardest one he'd ever faced, learning how to be the kind of man his daughter could be proud of and his wife could trust again. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one chance at a time, it would have to be enough. The first 2 weeks of fatherhood happened in careful increments. Victor visited 3 times, always at Isabella's invitation, always for exactly the amount of time she specified. An hour on Tuesday, 90 minutes on Friday, 2 hours on Sunday afternoon. He showed up exactly when he said he would, left when asked, and never once pushed for more. It was excruciating. Every instinct screamed at him to demand more time, to assert his rights as a father, to control the situation the way he controlled everything else in his life. But Dr. Morrison's voice played in his head during those moments. Control is what got you here, Victor. Letting go is what might get you out. So he let go. He followed Isabella's rules. He held Elena when permitted and handed her back without complaint. He learned to change diapers with fumbling hands, while Isabella watched with an expression somewhere between amusement and surprise. He made bottles at 2 a.m. when Isabella texted that she was exhausted, driving 40 minutes each way just to help for an hour. "You don't have to do this," Isabella said one of those nights, watching him wash bottles in her small kitchen while Elena slept in her arms. "I want to. It's not glamorous. It's just dishes and dirty diapers and being tired all the time." Victor dried his hands and turned to face her. "I know, but this is what being a father looks like. The real work, not the fun parts or the photo moments. Just showing up for the hard stuff." Isabella studied him with those dark eyes that had once looked at him with love and now held mostly caution. "You're different." "I'm trying to be." "No, I mean it. You're actually different." She shifted Elena slightly. The old Victor would have hired a night nurse and considered that good enough. The old Victor was an idiot. "Yeah, he was." She said it without malice, just stating fact. But this version is confusing. How? Because it makes me wonder if this person was always there and you just chose not to be him, or if losing everything is the only thing that could make you change. Isabella's voice was soft but sharp. "And I don't know which answer is worse." Victor had no response to that. Both options were damning. Either he'd always been capable of being present and chose not to be, or he was only changing now because of consequences. Either way, it didn't paint him in a good light. "I think," he said slowly, "I was always capable. I just didn't think I needed to be. I thought power and money were enough. They're not. I know that now." "Do you? Or are you just saying what I want to hear?" The question hung between them like smoke. Victor wanted to protest, to insist he was genuine, but Isabella deserved more than automatic defensiveness. "I don't know how to prove it's real," he admitted, "except by keeping showing up, by being consistent, by letting my actions speak instead of my words." "Then do that." Isabella stood carefully, Elena still sleeping against her shoulder. "And Victor? Stop trying to figure out what I want to hear. Just be honest. I've had enough of performances." She went upstairs to put Elena down, and Victor finished the dishes alone, thinking about performances. His whole life had been a performance. The powerful crime boss, the untouchable king, the man who never showed weakness. He'd performed for his organization, for his enemies, for everyone except the one person who'd actually mattered. When Isabella came back downstairs, he was drying the last bottle. "She's down for maybe 2 hours if we're lucky," Isabella said, exhaustion evident in her voice. "You should go home. Get some sleep." "Are you getting sleep?" "Not really, but that's what new mothers do." Victor hesitated, then said, "I could stay. Not in a weird way. Just on the couch, so you can actually rest and I'll handle the next feeding." "Victor, no expectations, no ulterior motives. You need sleep, and I can manage a bottle and a diaper change." He met her eyes. "Let me help. Actually help." Isabella looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. "Fine. But you're on the couch, and if you try anything, I won't. I promise." She showed him where everything was, bottles in the fridge, diapers in the basket, the baby monitor by the couch. Then she went upstairs without another word, and Victor was alone with the quiet house and the knowledge that his daughter was sleeping 2 rooms away. He didn't sleep, just sat on the couch watching the monitor, waiting for Elena to wake up. When she did, around 4 a.m., he was up the stairs before the second cry. The nursery was small, painted pale green, nothing like the elaborate room he'd prepared at the penthouse. Elena was in her crib, face scrunched up in red, working herself up to a proper scream. Victor picked her up carefully, supporting her head the way Isabella had taught him. "Hey, Elena, it's okay, I've got you." She quieted slightly at the sound of his voice, her tiny fists waving. Victor grabbed a bottle from the warmer Isabella had set up, tested the temperature on his wrist, and settled into the rocking chair. Elena latched onto the bottle immediately, her eyes opening to stare up at him with that unfocused baby gaze. Victor looked back at her and felt something shift in his chest, not the dramatic revelation he'd expected, but something quieter. a sense of responsibility that went deeper than obligation. Your mom's right to be careful with me, he told Elena softly. I screwed up really bad. Did things that hurt her, hurt both of you, even though you weren't born yet. Elena kept drinking, unbothered by his confession. But I'm going to do better. Not just say it, actually be better. You deserve a father who shows up. Who knows how to change a diaper and warm a bottle and rock you back to sleep at 4 a.m. But then, the bottle was half empty when he heard footsteps. Isabella stood in the doorway, wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants, her hair a mess. I thought I'd dream it, she said quietly. You actually being here. I'm here. You're feeding her wrong. Tilt the bottle more so she doesn't get air. Victor adjusted and Elena's sucking became smoother. Isabella came closer, watching with that complicated expression she wore around him now. This is strange, she said. What is? Seeing you like this? Domestic. Normal. She sat on the edge of the changing table. You spent years making sure I knew you were above normal. Too important for ordinary life. I was wrong. Yeah, you were. Isabella watched Elena for a moment. She likes you. Babies can tell when someone's uncomfortable holding them. She's relaxed with you. She's trusting. I don't know if I've earned that. You haven't, but she doesn't know that yet. Isabella's voice was gentle but firm. Don't let her down, Victor. She didn't choose you. She got you by default. The least you can do is be worth what she got. The words hit home. Elena finished her bottle, and Victor lifted her to his shoulder for burping, patting her back gently until she released a tiny belch that was somehow both gross and endearing. You're actually good at this, Isabella observed. YouTube tutorials. You watched YouTube tutorials on burping a baby? And diaper changing, and swaddling, and recognizing different types of cries. Victor settled Elena back in his arms, watching her eyes drift closed. I had a lot to learn. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. The Victor I married would have hired people to do all this. The Victor you married was an asshole who didn't know what mattered. And now you do? I'm learning. He looked up at her. I know it doesn't fix what I broke. I know watching me be a decent father now doesn't erase you being pregnant alone and scared while I was off destroying our marriage. But I'm trying to be someone you don't have to regret having a child with. Something flickered across Isabella's face. Pain, maybe, or memory, or something too complicated to name. I could never regret her. Even with everything that happened, I don't regret Elena. I don't either. She's the best thing I've ever been part of making. Better than your empire? Victor looked down at his sleeping daughter, at the tiny, perfect face that was half his and half Isabella's. Yeah, better than all of it. They sat in silence while Elena slept, and for the first time since that night at the hotel, the quiet between them didn't feel hostile. Just tired and sad and tentatively hopeful in a way neither of them wanted to acknowledge. You should put her down, Isabella finally said. She's out. Victor stood carefully and placed Elena in her crib, covering her with the soft yellow blanket. She didn't stir, completely at peace in a way that made something in his chest ache. Back downstairs, Isabella made coffee while Victor sat at the small kitchen table, feeling out of place and exactly where he needed to be. I can't promise anything, Isabella said, sliding a mug across to him. About us. About whether I can get past what you did. I know. But I can promise to be fair, to let you be Elena's father, to not punish her for your mistakes. That's more than I deserve. Yeah, it is. She sat across from him, wrapping her hands around her own mug. But she deserves a father, and you're it. So we figure out how to make that work. What does that look like? I don't know yet. Maybe you come by a few times a week. Maybe eventually you get overnight visits. Maybe someday she stays at your place. Isabella's voice was carefully neutral. But not yet. Right now, she stays with me, and you earn the right to more time. Okay? And Victor? The second your business touches her life, this ends. The second I think she's in danger because of who you are, you're out, permanently. It was a fair line, a reasonable boundary, and it terrified him because Victor's business was violent and unpredictable and exactly the kind of thing that could destroy an innocent child. I'm working on getting out, he said. Isabella's eyebrows rose. Out of what? The family business, the organization, all of it. Victor met her gaze. I've been planning it for the last few weeks, Transitioning power, setting up legitimate fronts, finding ways to step back without starting a war. You're leaving the Mafia. Her tone was disbelieving. Not overnight. It's complicated and it'll take time. But yeah, that's the plan. Why? Because I don't want Elena growing up with a father who might get killed or arrested. I don't want her childhood memories to be prison visits or funerals. He paused. And because I'm tired, Bella. I'm tired of the violence and the paranoia and looking over my shoulder. I built this empire, and it cost me everything that actually mattered. Isabella studied him like she was trying to find the lie, the angle, the hidden manipulation. This isn't just about getting me back? No, I want that. I want us to be a family. But even if you never forgive me, I still need to get out. For Elena. For myself. For who I want to be instead of who I've been. Getting out isn't easy. You've said that yourself. People who try to leave usually end up dead. I know. That's why I'm being careful. Strategic. Victor took a sip of coffee. Tony's taking over most of it. He's been with me for years and people respect him. I'm transitioning to advisor role, then gradually fading into the background, making it look natural instead of sudden. And if it doesn't work, then I die trying to give my daughter a better father than the one she's got right now. The bluntness of it seemed to catch Isabella off guard. She sat back, processing, and Victor waited. He'd learned that patience thing, giving her space to think instead of pushing for immediate reactions. That's either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever said, she finally said. Probably both. Victor, She stopped, started again. I don't know what to do with this version of you. The one who shows up at 2 a.m. and feeds the baby and talks about leaving everything you built. It's like you're a completely different person. I'm not, though. I'm still me, just trying to be a better version. And if I can't trust that? If I keep waiting for you to go back to who you were? Victor had thought about this question a lot during his therapy sessions. Then I keep being consistent until you do trust it. Or until you decide you can't and we figure out co-parenting instead. Either way, I'm not going anywhere. The sky outside was starting to lighten with dawn. They'd been up for hours, and exhaustion showed on both their faces. But something had shifted in the conversation, a small crack in the wall Isabella had built between them. I should try to sleep before she wakes up again, Isabella said, standing. Yeah, I should probably head out. Or, she hesitated, looking uncertain. You could stay. Keep sleeping on the couch. It's actually helpful having someone else here for the night feedings. It was the closest thing to an olive branch she'd offered. Victor nodded, trying not to show how much that small gesture meant. I'll stay. Thank you. Isabella disappeared upstairs without another word, and Victor settled back on the couch with a spare blanket. He didn't sleep. His mind was too full, churning through everything that had been said. But he stayed, listening to the quiet house, ready for when Elena needed him again. The pattern continued for the next 2 weeks. Victor would come by in the evenings, help with Elena, sleep on the couch, and handle the night feedings while Isabella got desperately needed rest. During the day, he'd go back to the city and work on his exit strategy, meetings with Tony, conversations with their lawyer, careful restructuring that wouldn't trigger suspicion. You're really doing this, Tony said one afternoon, reviewing the documents Victor had drawn up, walking away from everything. Not everything, just the illegal parts. Which is pretty much all of it. Victor shrugged. Then I guess I'm starting over. Because of the kid? Because I want to be someone she can be proud of. Someone who doesn't have to lie about what he does for a living. Victor looked at Tony. You think I'm crazy? Yeah, but I also think you're doing the right thing. Tony set down the papers. I've known you 15 years, Victor. Never seen you happy. Not really. Power didn't do it. Money didn't do it. Maybe this will. Maybe. The transition was delicate work, convincing the other families that Victor was stepping back for health reasons, that Tony was the natural successor, that nothing fundamental would change. Some believed it. Others were suspicious, but not enough to start problems. Romano made noise about weakness, but Marco handled him with the kind of efficiency that made it clear the organization was still strong, even with Victor pulling back. Meanwhile, life at the small suburban house developed its own rhythm. Elena started smiling, real smiles, not just gas, and the first time she smiled at Victor, he actually felt his eyes get wet. She likes you, Isabella said, watching from the doorway. More than I expected. I'm her dad. She's supposed to like me. You'd be surprised how many fathers their kids don't like. Isabella came closer, sitting next to him on the floor where he was doing tummy time with Elena. My father left when I was 3, just walked out one day and never came back. Victor knew this. It was one of the few personal things Isabella had shared early in their relationship. I'm not going anywhere. That's what he said too. I'm not him, Bella. I know, but trauma doesn't care about logic. She reached out, running her finger along Elena's tiny hand. I keep waiting for you to get bored, to decide this suburban dad thing isn't for you, to go back to your real life and leave us here. This is my real life now. For how long? A month? 6 months? Until something more exciting comes along? Victor set Elena down carefully on her playmat and turned to face Isabella fully. I sent you that photo 2 months ago. In those 2 months, I've been to therapy 16 times. I've assembled furniture. I've learned to change diapers and warm bottles and recognize the difference between a hungry cry and a tired cry. I've started transitioning out of the organization that's been my entire adult life. I've slept on your couch more nights than in my own bed. And not once, not one single time have I done any of this because I was bored or because I wanted something to do. His voice had risen slightly, and Elena made a startled sound. Victor immediately softened his tone, picking her up. Sorry, sweetheart. Daddy's just trying to make a point. What point? Isabella asked quietly. That I'm here because I choose to be. Because being your husband and Elena's father matters more than anything else I've ever done. He looked at Isabella, letting her see everything. I know I have to earn back your trust. I know it'll take time, but I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me showing up and trying and probably screwing up sometimes, but always coming back to try again. Isabella's eyes were wet. I want to believe you. Then let me prove it, not just for another month or 6 months, but for as long as it takes. They sat there on the floor, Elena between them, and something unspoken passed in the silence. Not forgiveness, it was too soon for that. But acknowledgement, maybe. Recognition that they were both trying to navigate something broken and figure out if it could be fixed. She needs a bath, Isabella said eventually. You want to help? It was such a small thing, such a domestic, normal request. But Victor heard the real question underneath. Are you still here for the boring parts? The unglamorous daily work of parenting? Yeah, he said. Show me how. They went upstairs together, and Isabella taught him how to bathe a newborn. The temperature of the water, supporting her head, being gentle with the soft spot. Elena splashed and made little sounds that might have been enjoyment or protest, and Victor was completely out of his element and exactly where he needed to be. After Elena was clean and dressed and falling asleep in Isabella's arms, Victor cleaned up the bathroom while Isabella put her down. When she came back, she found him scrubbing the tub with the kind of focus he used to reserve for business deals. You don't have to do that, she said. I know, but you shouldn't have to do everything. He finished and stood, drying his hands. I'm trying to be an actual partner, not just a visitor. We're not partners, Victor. We're separated. I know, but we're co-parents, and that means pulling my weight. Isabella leaned against the doorframe, looking exhausted and beautiful and guarded. Sometimes I see you doing these normal things, cleaning the tub, folding baby clothes, heating bottles, and I think maybe you really have changed. But then I remember that photo and how much it hurt, and I don't know if I can get past it. What do you need from me? I don't know. Time, maybe. Consistency. Proof that this isn't just an act. Then that's what I'll give you. And if it's not enough? If I never get past it? Victor had thought about this possibility during sleepless nights on the couch. Then we co-parent as best we can. We put Elena first, we're respectful and cooperative, and I live with the consequences of destroying the best thing that ever happened to me. That's very mature of you. Yeah, well, my therapist is expensive. She's teaching me all sorts of mature coping strategies. Isabella almost smiled. Almost. You're really in therapy? Like actually going and talking about your feelings? Twice a week. Dr. Morrison says I have abandonment issues from my parents dying and control issues from building an empire and emotional unavailability issues from being a criminal for 20 years. Victor shrugged. She's probably right about all of it. Probably? Definitely. She's definitely right. He paused. You could come with me sometime, to a session. If you wanted to talk through things with a professional present. Isabella looked surprised. You want me to come to your therapy? I want you to feel safe talking to me. If that means having Dr. Morrison there as a buffer, then yeah, I want that. I'll think about it. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Victor counted it as progress. That night, after another 2 a.m. feeding, Isabella came downstairs instead of going back to bed. Victor was in the kitchen, cleaning bottles again, and she sat at the table watching him. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Did you love her? The woman in the photo. The question landed like a punch. Victor set down the bottle he was washing and turned to face her. No, not even a little bit. Then why? Because she dared me to. Because I was arrogant enough to think it didn't matter. Because I'd spent so long not caring about your feelings that I forgot how to consider them. He leaned against the counter. Her name was Lena. We'd been seeing each other for a few months. It meant nothing, just ego and stupidity and me being the worst version of myself. A few months? Isabella's voice was quiet. It wasn't just that one night? Victor felt his stomach drop. He'd assumed Isabella knew, but clearly she'd thought it was a one-time thing. No, it was longer. He forced himself to be honest. I'm sorry. I should have told you that from the start. How long? 3 months. Maybe 4. Isabella stood abruptly, and Victor saw her hands shaking. 4 months. You cheated on me for 4 months while I was pregnant. Yes. And I only found out because you were stupid enough to send me a photo. Yes. She was across the kitchen before he realized she'd moved, and her hand connected with his face in a slap that snapped his head to the side. Victor didn't move, didn't defend himself, just took it. You bastard, Isabella said, her voice breaking. You complete bastard. I know. 4 months. 4 months of coming home to me and pretending everything was fine while you were with her. I'm sorry? Don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize again. Your apologies mean nothing. Victor stood there, his cheeks stinging, and let her rage. She'd earned it, had earned it months ago, and he'd been getting off easy with her quiet grief instead of her justified anger. I hate you, Isabella said, tears streaming down her face now. I hate you for doing this, for being so careless with something I treasured, for making me feel like I wasn't enough. You were always enough. This was about me being broken, not about you lacking anything. That's such bullshit, such therapy speak bullshit. She was pacing now, energy and fury pouring out after months of restraint. You're broken, so you cheated? You have issues, so you betrayed me? No. You made choices, Victor. Every time you saw her, you chose her over me, over our baby, over our marriage. You're right. Stop agreeing with me. Her voice rose. Fight back, defend yourself. Give me something to push against instead of just standing there taking it. What do you want me to say? I want you to explain how you could do this, how you could smile in that photo while I was home alone preparing for our child. Isabella's voice cracked. I want you to make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's no explanation that makes it okay. Victor took a step toward her, then stopped when she stepped back. I was selfish and cruel, and I took you for granted. I thought you'd always be there no matter how badly I treated you, and I was wrong. Yes, you were wrong. Isabella wiped at her eyes angrily. And now what? You think showing up and changing diapers makes up for 4 months of betrayal? No, nothing makes up for it. I'm just trying to be better going forward. Well, it's not enough. The words echoed in the small kitchen. It's not enough to just be better now. It doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't heal what you broke. I know. Then why are you here? Isabella demanded. Why do you keep coming back when I can't even look at you without remembering that photo? Victor wanted to cross the kitchen and hold her, but he knew he'd lost that right. Because Elena deserves a father, and because I love you, even if you never love me back again, I still love you. You don't get to say that. Why not? It's true. Because love isn't just words, Victor. Love is actions. Love is choices. And you chose to be with someone else for 4 months while I was carrying your child. I know. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. His voice was steady despite the pain radiating through his chest. But I still love you. I probably never stopped, even when I was being too stupid to show it. Isabella stared at him, breathing hard, fury and pain warring across her face. "Get out! Bella, get out. I can't be near you right now." She was shaking. "Just go." Victor nodded, accepting the dismissal he'd earned. He grabbed his keys and jacket, pausing at the door. "I'm sorry," he said one more time. "I know you are. It doesn't help." He drove back to the city with his cheeks still stinging and his heart feeling like it had been put through a meat grinder. The penthouse was dark and empty when he arrived, and for the first time in weeks, Victor poured himself a drink. He didn't want it, didn't need it, but it was either that or put his fist through a wall, and he was trying to be better about handling emotions. His phone buzzed around 4 a.m. A text from Isabella. "Elena's crying. Can you talk me through settling her down? I'm too upset and she can sense it." Victor called immediately. "What's wrong? Is she sick?" "No, just fussy, but I'm still angry and she's picking up on it and making it worse." Isabella's voice was tired and strained. "What do you do when you calm her down?" "Put her on your shoulder and walk. Not bounce. Just steady movement. Talk to her. She likes hearing voices." He heard rustling, then Elena's cries getting slightly muffled. "It's okay, baby," Isabella was saying. "Mommy's just having a rough night, but you're okay. We're both okay." "Is it helping?" Victor asked. "A little." A pause. "I shouldn't have called you." "I'm glad you did. I told you to leave and then I called you 3 hours later. I'm sending mixed signals." "You're allowed to be confused. You're allowed to be angry and still need help." Victor sat on his couch, phone pressed to his ear, wishing he was there. "Being mad at me doesn't mean you have to do everything alone." He heard Elena's cries quieting, Isabella's footsteps steady on the floor. "Why did you do it, Victor?" Isabella asked softly. "Really? Not the therapy answer. The real answer." Victor thought about lying, about giving her the explanation that would hurt least. But she'd asked for truth. "Because it was easy," he said. "Because Lena wanted me without asking for anything back. No emotional labor, no vulnerability, just surface-level attraction. And I'd gotten so used to avoiding real intimacy with you that fake intimacy with her felt safer." "Safer than your own wife?" "Safer than admitting I was terrified of being a father. Safer than facing that I was becoming my uncle, cold and distant and married to power instead of people. Safer than confronting that I was failing you." Victor's voice was rough. "So yeah, I took the coward's way out. I chose easy over real, and I lost everything that mattered." The line was quiet except for Elena's occasional whimper and the sound of Isabella walking. "She's asleep," Isabella finally said. "I'm putting her down." "Okay." He waited, listening to the sounds of Isabella settling Elena in the crib. When she came back on the line, her voice was different, less angry, more exhausted. "Thank you for talking me through it. Anytime. I mean that. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., whenever. You need help, you call. Even when I'm mad at you?" "Especially then." Victor paused. "Bella, you have every right to be furious, to hate me, to never forgive me, but you don't have to do this alone just to prove a point. I screwed up our marriage. Don't let that mean you suffer more than you already have." "I'll think about it." She was quiet for a moment. "Victor?" "Yeah?" "The truth you just told me, about it being easier, about avoiding intimacy, that hurt worse than the therapy answers." "I know. I'm sorry." "But at least it was honest." Her voice was very soft. "At least you're finally being honest." The call ended, and Victor sat in his dark penthouse thinking about honesty and how much it cost. He'd built an empire on secrets and lies, on controlling information and showing people only what he wanted them to see. But with Isabella, honesty was the only currency that mattered anymore. And the truth was devastating for both of them. But it was real. Real was all they had left to build on, if they built anything at all. The weeks that followed their late-night honesty felt like walking on ice. One wrong step, and everything could crack open again. Isabella didn't invite Victor back to stay overnight, but she didn't shut him out completely either. He came by for scheduled visits, held Elena, helped with chores, and left when his time was up. The careful distance between them was painful but necessary, like a wound that needed air to heal. Elena turned 2 months old on a Tuesday. Victor brought a small cake, Not for her, obviously, but for Isabella, who'd survived 2 months of solo parenting. You didn't have to do this, Isabella said, looking at the cake on her kitchen counter. I wanted to. You've been doing this mostly alone. That deserves recognition. I haven't been alone. You've been here. She said it grudgingly, like admitting it cost her something. A few hours a week isn't the same as 24/7. Victor watched her cut 2 slices. You're doing the real work. They ate cake in silence while Elena slept in her bouncer, and Victor noticed how thin Isabella had gotten. The weight she'd gained during pregnancy was gone, replaced by a kind of exhaustion that went deeper than lack of sleep. Are you eating enough? He asked. I eat when she lets me. That's not an answer. Isabella set down her fork. I'm fine, Victor. Stop hovering. I'm not hovering. I'm concerned. Well, don't be. I've been taking care of myself long before you decided to start caring. The words stung because they were true. Victor had spent years not noticing whether Isabella ate or slept or needed anything beyond money for household expenses. Now he was trying to make up for lost time, but she was right. It came too late to erase the years of neglect. His phone buzzed, Tony calling. Victor ignored it. You can take that, Isabella said. It's not important. How do you know? Could be business. Then Tony can handle it. I'm with my daughter right now. Victor silenced the phone completely. The world can wait an hour. Isabella studied him with that look she got sometimes, like she was trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the one who'd sent that photo. You really are different. I'm trying to be. No, I mean it. The old Victor would have taken that call. Would have prioritized business over everything. She paused. Sometimes I think about that night, the photo, and I wonder if you'd make the same choice now. I wouldn't, not even close. How do I know that? You don't. You just have to watch me make different choices every day and decide if it's enough. Victor met her eyes. I can't undo what I did. I can only show you who I'm choosing to be now. Elena woke up crying, and the moment broke. Isabella went to her and Victor cleaned up the cake plates, thinking about choices and consequences and whether redemption was even possible for someone who'd destroyed as much as he had. Later that week, Isabella surprised him by accepting his invitation to come to therapy. Dr. Morrison welcomed them both into her office, and Victor watched Isabella take in the space, the comfortable chairs, the certificates on the wall, the box of tissues strategically placed within reach. Thank you for coming, Isabella, Dr. Morrison said. Victor's told me a lot about you. I bet he has. Isabella's voice was guarded. Nothing bad, mostly about how he failed you and wants to do better. Dr. Morrison smiled gently, which is refreshing. Most of my clients spend months blaming everyone else before they get to accountability. They settled into chairs, and Victor felt exposed in a way he hadn't when coming alone. Having Isabella here meant she'd see him vulnerable, uncertain, admitting to all his failures. So, Dr. Morrison began, what brings you both here today? Isabella looked at Victor, then back at the therapist. I don't know if I can forgive him, and I don't know if I should even try. Tell me more about that. He cheated on me for months while I was pregnant. Sent me a photo of himself with another woman. Made me feel invisible for years before that. Isabella's voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tight. And now he's being the perfect father and showing up and saying all the right things. But I keep waiting for it to fall apart. Waiting for him to go back to who he was. Yeah, because people don't really change, do they? Not fundamentally. Dr. Morrison looked at Victor. What do you think about that? I think she's right to be skeptical. I gave her every reason not to trust me. Victor leaned forward. But I also think people can change if they're willing to do the work. I'm doing the work. Whether it's enough is up to her. Isabella, what would enough look like to you? Dr. Morrison asked. The question seemed to catch Isabella off guard. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers twisting together. I don't know, she finally said. I want to trust him again. I want to believe he won't hurt me. But every time I start to feel safe, I remember that photo and how much it destroyed me. That's normal. Trauma creates protective mechanisms. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle. Your brain is trying to keep you safe by reminding you of the danger. The question is whether the current Victor is actually dangerous to you, or whether your brain is responding to the past Victor. How do I tell the difference? By looking at his actions over time, patterns matter more than individual moments. She turned to Victor. How long have you been consistently showing up? 3 months, since Elena was born. And before that? I was inconsistent for years, present but absent. Physically there but emotionally checked out. Dr. Morrison nodded. So we have years of one pattern and 3 months of a different pattern. Isabella's skepticism makes sense. 3 months isn't enough to override years of learned behavior. How long is enough? Isabella asked. There's no magic number. For some people, 6 months. For others, years. It depends on the depth of the wound and the consistency of the healing. Dr. Morrison looked between them. But I can tell you this, Victor's engagement in therapy is unusual. Most people don't do this kind of deep work unless they're genuinely committed to change. Or unless they want something badly enough to perform commitment, Isabella said. True. Which is why we focus on behavioral change, not just emotional proclamations. Victor, tell Isabella what you've been working on in our sessions. Victor took a breath. This was harder with Isabella watching. We've been working on emotional availability, on recognizing when I'm using work or control as a shield against vulnerability, on understanding that real strength includes admitting fear and asking for help. He looked at Isabella. We've also been working on understanding why I cheated, what need I was trying to fill, and why I chose that method instead of being honest with you. And what did you discover? Isabella's voice was quiet. That I was terrified of being a father, terrified of failing at it the way I failed at everything else that required emotional connection. So instead of talking to you about those fears, I found someone who didn't require anything real from me. Victor's hands were shaking slightly. It was cowardice disguised as power. Isabella's eyes were wet. You could have just talked to me. I know, but I'd spent so long not talking to you about real things that I didn't know how anymore. We'd become strangers living in the same house. Whose fault was that? Mine, completely mine. Victor didn't hesitate. You tried. You invited me to dinner, tried to discuss the baby, asked me to be present. I shut you down every time. Dr. Morrison let the silence sit for a moment before speaking. Isabella, what do you need from Victor going forward? I need to know this is real, that he's not just performing until he gets what he wants. What does he want? Me. Us. His family back. And if he can't have that? If you decide you can't forgive him? Dr. Morrison's question was gentle but direct. Isabella looked at Victor. What happens then? Then I keep being the best father I can be to Elena, Victor said. And I respect whatever boundaries you need. I told you before, I'm not doing this to manipulate you into taking me back. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. But you do want me back? Yeah, I want my wife back. I want my family back. I want the life I threw away. His voice was raw. But I also know I might not get that, and I have to be okay with those consequences. Isabella wiped at her eyes. I hate that you're saying the right things. Why? Because it makes it harder to stay angry, and I need the anger. It's the only thing protecting me from getting hurt again. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. Anger is a valid protective emotion, but it's exhausting to maintain long term. At some point, you'll need to decide whether staying angry serves you or whether it's just keeping you stuck. I don't feel stuck. I feel safe. Are you? Safe, I mean. Dr. Morrison's gaze was kind but penetrating. Or are you just isolated? There's a difference. The question hung in the air. Isabella didn't answer, but Victor saw the recognition flicker across her face. The acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, her walls were protecting her from more than just him. The session ended with homework for both of them. Victor was supposed to continue being consistent without expecting immediate rewards. Isabella was supposed to practice distinguishing between current Victor and past Victor, responding to who he was being now rather than who he'd been then. In the parking lot, they stood by their separate cars, the afternoon sun warm despite the approaching fall. Thank you for coming, Victor said. It was harder than I expected. Yeah, having you there made it real in a different way. Isabella unlocked her car, then paused. Victor, when you said you were scared of being a father, Do you still feel that way? Terrified. Every single day. He smiled ruefully. But I show up anyway. Being scared isn't an excuse anymore. It's just something I have to work through. How do you work through it? By doing it badly and learning, by asking for help, by accepting that I'm going to mess up and trying anyway. He looked at her. Dr. Morrison says fear is just information. It tells you something matters enough to be scary. And Elena matters more than anything I've ever been afraid of. Something in Isabella's expression softened. You're really trying, aren't you? Every day. Some days better than others. She got in her car but rolled down the window. I'm not ready to forgive you. I might never be ready. I know. But I'm not ready to completely give up on us either. I don't know what that means yet. It means you're being honest. That's all I can ask for. Isabella drove away, and Victor stood in the parking lot feeling like maybe, just maybe, they'd turned a corner. Not toward reconciliation necessarily, but toward something less hostile than where they'd been. His phone buzzed. Tony again. Victor called back. What's up? We've got a problem. Romano's making moves again, and this time he's bringing the Calabrese family in with him. Victor's first instinct was to drop everything and handle it. To assert dominance, remind everyone why they feared him, make the problem go away through force. Instead, he said, What do you think we should do? Silence on the other end. Then, You're asking me? You're running things now. What's your call? I think we need to sit down with both families. Show strength, but offer compromise. Make it clear we're not weak, but we're also not looking for war. Sounds smart. Do it. Just like that? You've been with me 15 years, Tony. You know how this works. Victor got in his car. I trust you. Handle it however you think is best. Boss, are you feeling okay? I'm feeling like I've been micromanaging for too long and it's time to actually delegate. He paused. And stop calling me boss. We're partners now. After he hung up, Victor drove back to the penthouse and did something he'd been putting off. He started packing up Isabella's things that were still there. Not to throw them away, but to box them carefully and store them. The wedding photos got wrapped in tissue paper. Her clothes got folded and packed. The touches of her personality that had made the penthouse feel like home got preserved, but put away. It felt like accepting reality. The penthouse wasn't their home anymore. Maybe it never really had been. It was Victor's fortress, not their family's sanctuary. He was almost done when his phone rang. Carlo. Isabella invited you to Elena's christening, Carlo said without preamble. I think you should know I voted against it. Noted. I'm serious, Victor. One wrong move, one hint of your old self, and I will personally throw you out of that church. Understood. When is it? Next Sunday. St. Catherine's at 2. Carlo sighed. Look, I still think you're a piece of shit for what you did to my sister, but you've been showing up for Elena, and Bella says you're trying, so I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. Once. I appreciate that. Don't make me regret it. The call ended, and Victor stood in his half-packed penthouse thinking about churches and christenings and new beginnings. He hadn't been inside a church in years, not since his grandmother's funeral. The idea of standing in one now, asking for blessing on his daughter, felt both appropriate and hypocritical. But if Isabella wanted him there, he'd be there. The week leading up to the christening was chaotic. Tony handled a major negotiation with the Calabrese family that ended peacefully, which should have made Victor feel triumphant. Instead, he felt distant from it, like it was happening to someone else. His real focus was on finding the right gift for Elena's christening, something meaningful, not just expensive. He finally settled on a silver cross that had belonged to his grandmother. Simple, elegant, engraved with Elena's full name and the date. It was one of the few things he had left from the woman who'd raised him, and giving it to his daughter felt right. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly. Victor put on his best suit, tucked the small gift box in his pocket, and drove to St. Catherine's. The church was old, beautiful in that worn way that spoke of generations of prayers soaked into the stones. Isabella's family was already there, Carlo, their mother, various aunts and cousins, who looked at Victor with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. Isabella stood near the altar, with Elena in a beautiful white christening gown. When she saw Victor, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or relief that he'd actually shown up. You came, she said as he approached. You invited me. Where else would I be? I wasn't sure you'd want to. Churches aren't exactly your scene. Elena's my daughter. This is important to you. That makes it important to me. He looked at the baby in her arms. She looks beautiful. She's been screaming for the last hour. I think she hates the dress. Smart kid. Formal wear is uncomfortable. Victor smiled. You want me to hold her? Give your arms a break? Isabella hesitated, then carefully transferred Elena into his arms. Several of her relatives made small sounds of disapproval, but Isabella ignored them. The priest arrived, and the ceremony began. Victor stood next to Isabella, holding their daughter, and listened to words about faith and protection and raising a child in grace. He wasn't a religious man. His line of work had pretty much eliminated any belief in divine oversight. But standing there holding Elena while the priest blessed her, something shifted. This was bigger than him, bigger than his empire or his mistakes or his desperate attempts at redemption. This tiny person deserved to be protected, loved, given every chance to be better than her parents had been. When the priest asked who would support Elena's spiritual journey, Isabella's mother and Carlo stepped forward as godparents. Victor hadn't expected to be asked. He'd forfeited that right along with everything else, but it still stung slightly to be left out. After the ceremony, there was a small reception in the church hall. Victor stayed on the periphery, holding Elena while Isabella talked to relatives. He was an outsider here, tolerated but not welcomed, and he accepted that role because he'd earned it. Carlo approached him with a cup of punch that looked like it had been sitting out too long. You're being smart, Carlo said. Staying quiet, not making it about you. It's not about me. It's about Elena. See, the fact that you understand that is new. Carlo took a sip of the punch and grimaced. This is terrible. Why do church functions always have the worst refreshments? Builds character or kills you slowly? Carlo glanced at Isabella across the room. She's watching you. Has been all afternoon. I know. That means something? Probably just making sure I don't screw up. Or maybe wondering if you're actually different. Carlo studied him. I'm starting to think you might be, which pisses me off, honestly. I was comfortable hating you. You can still hate me. I did enough to earn it. Yeah, but it's harder when you're being reasonable and showing up and not acting like the arrogant asshole who broke my sister's heart. Carlo sighed. You're making this complicated. That's not my intention. I know, that's what makes it worse. Isabella approached with her mother, and Carlo excused himself. Isabella's mother, Maria, looked at Victor with the kind of expression that could freeze lava. Mrs. Russo, Victor said politely. I want to hate you, Maria said without preamble. I want to tell my daughter to never speak to you again, to keep my granddaughter away from you, to make you suffer the way you made her suffer. I understand, but I've been watching you today. The way you hold Elena, the way you stay back and let Isabella have her moment, the way you're not making demands or throwing your weight around. Maria's eyes were hard but not entirely cold. My daughter says you're trying to change. Is that true? Yes, ma'am. Why? Because you got caught. Because I finally saw what I'd become, and I hated it. Victor met her gaze. Your daughter deserved better than what I gave her, still deserves better. I'm trying to become someone worthy of being Elena's father. And Isabella's husband? If she'll have me. But that's her choice to make, not mine to demand. Maria studied him for a long moment. I don't forgive you, but I respect that you're trying. Don't make me regret saying that. She walked away and Isabella touched Victor's arm gently. That went better than expected, she said. Your mother is terrifying. She likes you more than she's letting on. If she truly hated you, she would have said so, loudly, in front of everyone. Isabella smiled slightly. The fact that she talked to you at all is progress. I'll take it. They stood together, watching the party continue around them. Elena had fallen asleep in Victor's arms, completely peaceful despite the noise. She's comfortable with you, Isabella observed. I've been working on it, reading books about infant development, learning her cues. Victor adjusted his hold carefully. She likes being held facing out so she can see everything, and she hates that one pacifier with the bears on it but loves the plain blue one. You know her pacifier preferences? I pay attention now. Isabella was quiet for a moment. Victor, can I ask you something? Anything. When you're with her, with us, are you happy? Or is this just obligation? The question surprised him. Victor looked down at his sleeping daughter, then at Isabella. This is the happiest I've been in years, he said honestly. Building the empire was satisfying. Having power was intoxicating, but it was all empty. This, being here, holding Elena, talking to you, this actually means something. You mean that? Every word. I spent decades chasing the wrong things. I thought success meant control and fear and money, but I was miserable. I just didn't realize it until I lost the only things that actually made me happy. Isabella's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I want to believe you so badly. Then believe me. Or don't. But know that I'm telling you the truth. Victor shifted Elena slightly. I screwed up everything, Bella. Our marriage, your trust, my chance at being there for your pregnancy. I can't fix any of that, but I can be honest about what I learned from losing it. And what did you learn? That love matters more than power. That being present matters more than being important. That my daughter's smile is worth more than controlling the entire city. He paused. And that I loved you the whole time, even when I was too stupid to show it. A tear slipped down Isabella's cheek. Why couldn't you have figured this out before you destroyed everything? I don't know. I wish I had. But I didn't, and now we're here, and all I can do is try to be better going forward. The party was winding down. Relatives started leaving, offering hugs to Isabella and cautious nods to Victor. When everyone was gone except Carlo helping clean up, Isabella took Elena from Victor's arms. I should get her home. She needs a proper nap. Yeah, of course. Victor pulled the small box from his pocket. I got her something, for the christening. As Isabella opened it and went very still, the silver cross gleamed against the velvet lining. This was your grandmother's, she whispered. She would have wanted Elena to have it. She always believed in new beginnings, second chances. Victor's voice was rough. Seems appropriate. Isabella carefully lifted the cross, reading the engraving. Then she looked at him with an expression that was complicated and soft and guarded all at once. Thank you. This means a lot. You're welcome. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility and pain and years of history. Then Isabella took a breath and said something that changed everything. Do you want to come over for dinner? Tomorrow night, just the three of us. Victor's heart jumped. Are you sure? No, but I'm asking anyway. She clutched the cross carefully. I can't promise it means anything beyond dinner, but I'd like to try. To see if we can be in the same room without all the anger and hurt. I'd like that. What time? 7. And Victor? Don't bring anything expensive, just bring yourself. Just myself, I can do that. That night, Victor stood in his penthouse looking at the city lights and feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope that demanded immediate results, but something quieter. The hope that maybe, with enough time and consistency and honest effort, broken things could be repaired. The next evening, he showed up at Isabella's door at exactly 7 with nothing but himself and a bottle of wine that was nice but not ostentatious. Isabella answered wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her in months. You're on time, she said. I'm always on time now. It's part of the new me. The new you is very punctual. Among other improvements. Dinner was simple. Pasta and salad. Nothing fancy. Elena sat in her bouncer on the table between them, awake and alert, tracking their movements with her dark eyes. So this is weird, Isabella said as they ate. Yeah, very weird. I keep expecting you to check your phone or get called away for some emergency. Tony knows I'm unavailable tonight. He'd only call if the city was literally burning down. Victor took a bite of pasta. This is really good, by the way. It's just jarred sauce. Still good. Better than eating alone in my penthouse. They fell into conversation slowly, carefully, like learning a language they'd once spoken fluently but had forgotten. Isabella talked about Elena's sleep schedule, about the challenges of breastfeeding, about the weird isolation of early motherhood. Victor listened and asked questions and didn't try to fix everything, just offered presence. I hired a company to start transitioning my businesses, he said when there was a lull. Making everything legitimate. It'll take a couple years, but eventually the DeLuca name won't be associated with crime anymore. Isabella set down her fork. You're really doing it? Actually leaving that life? Yeah. Tony's taking over the parts I can't legitimize. And I'm focusing on the businesses that can go legal. Real estate development, some restaurants, investment properties. Victor met her eyes. I want Elena to be proud of what her father does. Can't do that if I'm running an illegal empire. That's dangerous. People who try to leave usually end up dead. I know. That's why I'm being careful, making it gradual, making sure everyone benefits from the transition. He paused. And if it goes wrong, at least I died trying to be better. Don't say that. It's the truth. I'd rather die trying to be someone Elena can respect than live as someone she'd be ashamed of. Isabella was quiet, processing. Elena made a small sound and they both turned to her automatically. She was staring at the light fixture above the table, fascinated by something neither adult could see. She's going to have questions someday, Isabella said softly. About us, about what happened. What do we tell her? The truth. Age-appropriate versions as she grows up, but the truth. Victor watched his daughter. We tell her that her father made terrible mistakes, that he hurt her mother badly, but that he learned from it and spent the rest of his life trying to be better. And if she asks why we're not together, we tell her that some things break in ways that can't be fully repaired, but that we both love her more than anything, and we're doing our best to give her a good life despite our mistakes. Isabella's eyes were wet again. You've thought about this a lot. Every day. How to explain this to her. How to make sure our failures don't become her burden. He reached across the table tentatively, and Isabella didn't pull away when he touched her hand. I'm sorry, Bella. For all of it. For the photo, for the affair, for the years I made you feel invisible. For being too broken to appreciate what I had until I lost it. I know you are. You've said it a lot. Because I mean it a lot. Victor squeezed her hand gently. But I also know sorry isn't enough, so I'm trying to show you through actions that I'm different. You are showing me. That's what makes this so hard. Isabella didn't pull her hand away. Because part of me wants to forgive you and try again. But another part is terrified that this is temporary, that you'll revert back once you feel secure again. I understand that fear. It's valid. So what do? We keep doing this. Having dinner, talking, co-parenting, being honest with each other. Victor's thumb traced small circles on her hand. And we let time prove whether this change is real. And if time proves it's not, then you were right to be cautious, and we figure out how to be good co-parents instead of trying to be a couple. Elena started fussing, and Isabella pulled her hand back to pick up their daughter. Victor felt the loss of that touch but understood it. They were still figuring out boundaries, still learning how to be around each other without the weight of their history crushing every moment. I should feed her and get her ready for bed, Isabella said. Do you want help? She hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, you can do the bath while I warm a bottle. They moved through the evening routine together with an ease that surprised both of them. Victor bathed Elena while Isabella prepared everything for bedtime. Then they switched. Isabella fed Elena while Victor cleaned up the kitchen. It felt domestic and normal and fragile, like something that could shatter if they acknowledged it too directly. When Elena was finally asleep, they stood in the hallway between the nursery and the stairs, neither quite ready to end the evening. Thank you for coming, Isabella said. Thank you for inviting me. It was nice, surprisingly nice. She leaned against the wall. I forgot what it felt like to have help, to not do everything alone. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here. Anytime you need me. That's what scares me. Isabella's voice was barely above a whisper. What if I start depending on you again? What if I let myself believe things can be different and you prove me wrong? Victor wanted to promise that would never happen, but promises from him didn't mean much anymore. Instead, he said, all I can do is keep showing up, keep being consistent, keep proving through actions that I've changed. The rest is up to you. What if I can never fully trust you again? Then we figure out what a relationship looks like with partial trust. Or we accept that we work better as co-parents than as a couple. Victor met her eyes. I want us to work, Bella. I want my wife back, but I also want you to be happy and feel safe, If those things can't coexist, then your happiness and safety matter more. Isabella studied him for a long moment. Then, moving slowly like she might change her mind, she stepped closer and rested her head against his chest. Victor froze, afraid to move and break whatever this was. "I miss this," she whispered. "Just being held, feeling like someone's got me." Victor carefully wrapped his arms around her, holding her gently like she was something precious that might slip away. They stood there in the hallway, just breathing together, and it was more intimate than anything physical they'd shared in years. "I've got you," Victor said quietly, "for however long you'll let me." They stayed like that for a few minutes before Isabella pulled back, wiping at her eyes. "You should probably go. It's getting late." "Yeah, okay." Victor grabbed his jacket from downstairs. At the door, he paused. "Same time next week?" "Maybe. I'll let you know." She managed a small smile. "Baby steps, right? Baby steps." He drove back to the city feeling like something fundamental had shifted. Not fixed. Nothing was fixed. But shifted in a way that felt like progress. The next few weeks established a new pattern. Victor came for dinner twice a week, helped with Elena, talked with Isabella like they were learning to be friends again. They didn't talk about their relationship directly, just let it evolve naturally around the framework of co-parenting. Dr. Morrison called it rebuilding foundation. "You're establishing new patterns," she explained during one of Victor's solo sessions. "New ways of interacting that aren't based on your old dynamic. That's healthy. It's also slow. Anything worth having usually is." She leaned back in her chair. "How are you handling the uncertainty?" "Better than I expected. I'm not trying to control the outcome anymore, just trying to be present for whatever happens." "That's significant growth, Victor. A few months ago, you couldn't tolerate anything you couldn't control." "A few months ago, I was an asshole." "True, but now you're a work in progress." "That's better." The transition out of his illegal businesses continued. Some associates were unhappy about it, but Tony handled the descent with the same ruthless efficiency Victor had once employed. The legitimate businesses were growing, surprisingly profitable without the criminal overhead. "You could actually make more money doing this legally," his accountant pointed out during a review. "No payoffs, no enforcers, no overhead for managing illegal operations." "Turns out crime doesn't actually pay that well when you factor in expenses," Victor said dryly. 4 months after Elena's birth, Isabella called him on a Thursday afternoon. "Can you come over tonight instead of tomorrow?" Her voice sounded strained. "What's wrong? Is Elena okay?" "She's fine. I'm having a hard day and I could use the company." Victor was in his car within minutes. He arrived to find Isabella on the couch, Elena sleeping in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Hey," he said softly, sitting next to her. "Talk to me." "I don't know what's wrong. I just feel so sad. Like everything is heavy and I can't shake it." Isabella wiped at her eyes. "I think it might be postpartum depression. I've been reading about it and the symptoms match." "Have you talked to your doctor?" "I have an appointment next week, but right now I just feel like I'm drowning and I didn't want to be alone." Victor carefully took Elena from her arms and set her in the bassinet. Then he pulled Isabella close, letting her cry against his shoulder. "You're not alone," he said. "You've got me. You've got your mom and Carlo. You've got people who love you. I feel like a terrible mother, like I should be happier. Elena's healthy and beautiful, and I have help now, but I still feel so empty." "Depression isn't rational, Bella. It's a medical condition, not a character flaw." Victor rubbed her back gently. "And you're not a terrible mother. You're an amazing mother dealing with a chemical imbalance." "How are you so calm about this?" "Because I've been reading too, about postpartum depression, about how to support a partner going through it." He kissed the top of her head without thinking. "I'm here, whatever you need." They sat like that for a while, Isabella crying and Victor holding her. Eventually, she fell asleep against him, exhausted from emotion. Victor shifted carefully to make her more comfortable, then just sat there with his wife sleeping in his arms and his daughter sleeping nearby, feeling the weight of their trust. When Isabella woke up an hour later, she looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to fall apart on you." "Don't apologize. You're going through something hard. It's okay to not be okay." The old you would have hired someone to deal with this. The old me was an idiot. Victor brushed hair back from her face. The new me knows that being here is the only thing that matters. Isabella looked at him with an expression that was complicated and vulnerable. I think I'm starting to forgive you. The words hit Victor harder than he expected. Yeah? I don't know if I can forget. I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were. Her voice was soft. But I'm starting to believe you've changed. That this version of you is real. It is real, I promise. I know. That's what makes it possible to forgive. She took a shaky breath. I'm not saying we're together again. I'm not ready for that. But I'm saying maybe someday. Maybe if you keep being this person. I'll keep being this person even if there's no someday. This is who I am now, not a performance to win you back. I believe you. Isabella reached up and touched his face gently. When did you become someone I could believe in? When I finally had something worth changing for. They sat together in the gathering twilight, Elena sleeping peacefully, and something settled between them. Not resolution exactly, but understanding. The acknowledgement that healing was happening slowly, that maybe broken things could be repaired if you were willing to do the work. Over the next 2 months, Victor became Isabella's primary support system as she dealt with postpartum depression. He came over every evening, took over night feedings so she could sleep, accompanied her to doctor's appointments, and never once made her feel weak for struggling. You're better at this than I expected, her doctor said during one appointment where Victor had come along. Most partners get overwhelmed by postpartum depression. Most partners haven't already failed their wives once, Victor said. I'm not making that mistake again. Isabella squeezed his hand. The medication helped, and therapy helped, and time helped. Slowly, Isabella started feeling more like herself. Started smiling more, crying less, engaging with Elena with genuine joy instead of exhausted obligation. I'm feeling better, she told Victor one evening, like I'm coming out of a fog. I can see it. You look lighter. I am lighter. For the first time since she was born, I actually feel capable of this. Isabella looked at Elena, who was practicing tummy time on the floor. Thank you for being here, for not running when things got hard. I ran once, never again. Never? Never. Well, Victor said it with absolute certainty. 6 months after Elena was born, Isabella invited Victor to stay for dinner and didn't specify when he should leave. They put Elena to bed together, then sat on the couch with a bottle of wine between them. So, Isabella said, we should probably talk about what we're doing. What are we doing? I don't know. You're here almost every night. We're raising Elena together. We're rebuilding something. She looked at him. But we haven't actually discussed what that something is. Victor set down his wine glass. What do you want it to be? I asked you first. Fair. He took a breath. I want us to try again, slowly, with boundaries and communication and all the things we didn't have before. I want to date my wife again. Remember why we fell in love before I screwed it all up. Date your wife? Isabella's lips quirked slightly. That's surprisingly romantic for you. I've been working on it. Doctor, Morrison says I need to learn how to express affection without it being transactional. And have you learned that? I'm trying. Victor shifted to face her fully. I love you, Bella. Not because you're the mother of my child or because you forgave me or because of what you can give me. I love you because you're smart and strong and you made me want to be better, even when I was fighting it. I love you because you're you. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. I'm trying to be honest all the time now. It's exhausting, but worth it. She laughed through her tears, then leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft and tentative and tasted like wine and possibility. When they pulled apart, Isabella said, we're doing this very slowly, with rules and check-ins and the understanding that one screw up and we're done. I can live with that. And you're still sleeping on the couch for now. We're not rushing physical intimacy. Understood. And you keep going to therapy. We both do. Together and separately. Done. Victor touched her face gently. Anything else? Yeah, one more thing. Isabella's voice was serious. No more women, ever. No more photos. No more choosing work over family. You promise to be better. Prove it every single day. I will. I swear. Okay then. She kissed him again, longer this time. Let's try this. Slowly. Slowly, Victor agreed. The next year unfolded carefully. Victor moved back into the house, first sleeping on the couch, then eventually back into the bedroom once Isabella felt ready. They went to couples therapy religiously, worked through issues as they came up, and learned how to communicate like adults instead of avoiding problems. Victor's transition out of criminal enterprises was complete. The DeLuca name became associated with legitimate business instead of organized crime. Some old associates cut ties completely. Others respected the change and maintained friendly distance. You did it, Tony said over drinks one night. Actually got out clean. I didn't think it was possible. Neither did I, but desperation is a powerful motivator. And being a father? That too. Victor smiled. You should meet her sometime. Elena, she's incredible. The great Victor DeLuca talking about his kid like a regular dad. Tony shook his head in amusement. Never thought I'd see it. Neither did I. But here we are. Elena's first birthday party was at the small house, filled with Isabella's family and a few close friends. Victor stood back and watched his daughter demolish a smash cake, getting frosting everywhere, completely delighted with herself. She's perfect, Isabella said, coming to stand next to him. She is. Takes after her mother. Stop being charming. You're going to make me forget to stay cautiously optimistic. Victor wrapped an arm around her waist. How am I doing? On the cautious optimism scale. Better than expected. Isabella leaned into him. You've been consistent for a year. That counts for something. Just something? Okay. It counts for a lot. She looked up at him. I think we might actually make it, Victor. Not back to what we were, but forward to something better. I think so too. Carlo approached with Elena, who was covered head to toe in cake. Your daughter is a disaster. I love her. Victor took Elena, not caring about the frosting getting on his shirt. Hey, birthday girl. Having fun? Elena babbled something that might have been words or might have been enthusiastic nonsense, and Victor felt his heart expand in a way he still wasn't used to. That night, after everyone left and Elena was asleep, Victor and Isabella sat in their bedroom, the one they now shared again, and talked about the future. I want another baby, Isabella said. Someday. Not right away, but eventually. Yeah? Yeah, Elena should have a sibling, and I think we're ready, or we will be. She looked at him seriously. But only if you're all in. No half measures, no going back to who you were. I'm all in. Have been since I held her that first time and realized what I'd almost lost. Promise me, Victor. Promise me you'll never make me feel invisible again. I promise. And if I ever start slipping, call me on it immediately. Don't let it build up like before. Deal. Isabella kissed him softly. I love you. I'm still angry about the past sometimes, but I love you. I love you too, and you're allowed to be angry. You've earned it. Very generous of you. I try. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in over a year, Victor felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 2 years after that photo nearly destroyed everything, Victor stood in the same nursery he'd assembled so badly and watched Isabella rock their second daughter to sleep. Sophia was 4 months old, and unlike Elena's birth, Victor had been there for everything, every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, every moment of labor. You're staring, Isabella whispered. I'm appreciating. Creepy. Worth it. She smiled and stood carefully, placing Sophia in the crib next to where Elena's had once been. Elena herself was asleep in her big girl bed down the hall, completely unaware that her parents were watching her baby sister with the kind of wonder that never got old. Downstairs, Isabella poured wine and they settled on the couch the way they did most evenings. Do you ever think about that night? Isabella asked. The photo? Sometimes. And I think about how close I came to losing everything. How one stupid choice almost cost me my entire family. Victor looked at her. But I also think about how it forced me to change, made me become someone worth being. You're not glad it happened? Hell no. I'd undo it in a heartbeat if I could. Save you that pain, save us the months of agony. He paused. But I also know I needed to hit rock bottom to rebuild properly. So I'm grateful for what I learned, even though I hate how I learned it. Isabella nodded slowly. I still think about it too. Probably always will, but it doesn't hurt the way it used to. What does it feel like now? Like a scar. Still there, still visible, but healed. She touched his face. We survived it. That counts for something. It counts for everything. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of actually knowing each other instead of just living parallel lives. Victor thought about the man he'd been, powerful, feared, empty, and the man he'd become. Father, husband, legitimate businessman, present. His empire was smaller now but more solid. His family was whole and happy. His daughters would grow up knowing their father not as a distant criminal, but as someone who showed up every day and chose them over everything else. It had taken losing everything to learn what actually mattered. But at least he'd learned. "What are you thinking about?" Isabella asked. "How lucky I am, how close I came to throwing this away." Victor pulled her closer. "How grateful I am that you gave me another chance." "You earned it." She kissed him softly. "Every day you earn it." "I plan to keep earning it for the rest of my life." "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." "Neither am I." Upstairs, Sophia made a small sound through the baby monitor, and they both listened carefully. When she settled back into sleep, they relaxed again. "We should probably sleep while we can," Isabella said. "Probably." But they stayed on the couch a little longer, holding each other in the quiet house they'd built together from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. It wasn't perfect. Some days were still hard. Some arguments still echoed with old pain, but it was real. It was theirs. And it was worth every impossible step it had taken to get here. Victor DeLuca had learned the hardest lesson of his life, that power meant nothing without love, that control couldn't replace connection, and that sometimes you had to lose everything to understand what actually mattered. He'd been a king who ruled a city. Now he was just a man who changed diapers and rocked babies to sleep and showed up every single day for the family he'd almost destroyed. And that made him richer than any empire ever could.